Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nightmare Narratives. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Marcus Bloodmoon, and I've been a forest ranger for 22 years. Before that, I spent 8 years as a Marine sniper, in places I still can't talk about. I've seen what men can do to each other when nobody's watching. I've looked through a scope at people who deserved what was coming. I thought I knew what evil looked like. I was wrong. In 1994, I was 49 years old and working the wildest, most remote sections of George Washington National Forest in West Virginia. The Shenandoah Valley has some beautiful country, but it also has places where the hollers run so deep and dark that even the sun seems scared to go there. Places with names like Devil's Backbone and Satan's Fork. Places where the old mountain families still won't go after dark. Copperhead Hollow was one of those places. I'm a big man, 6'3", 220 pounds, and I'd never been afraid of the woods or anything in them. My family's been in these mountains since before the Revolutionary War. We're Scots-Irish Presbyterian stock. My grandfather was a circuit preacher who rode through these hollers on horseback, bringing God's word to the backwoods. He kept a Bible and a pistol in his saddlebags, and he used both when he needed to. I grew up hearing his stories about the old days, about feuds and moonshiners and dark things that supposedly lived in the deepest woods. I never believed the supernatural stuff. Ghosts and devils were just stories the old folks told. The real monsters were the ones who cooked meth in hidden labs, who brought drugs into our mountains, who turned good people into addicts. That was my specialty: law enforcement and drug interdiction. I knew the hidden trails, the old logging roads, the caves where criminals liked to set up shop. I'd busted dozens of operations over the years. Some went easy, some didn't. I had the scars to prove it. My wife Sarah worked as a nurse at the county hospital. We had 2 daughters, both grown and married. Our oldest, Jennifer, was pregnant with our first grandchild. Life was good. Simple. I had 10 more years until retirement, and I planned to spend them doing what I'd always done, protecting these mountains and the people in them. It was late September when everything changed. The leaves were just starting to turn, painting the ridges in red and gold. The air had that crisp feeling that makes you glad to be alive. I was sitting in my office at the ranger station, doing paperwork nobody would ever read, when the call came in. "Marcus, it's Sheriff Hendricks. We got something weird up in Copperhead Hollow. Real weird." I'd known Tom Hendricks for 20 years. He wasn't the type to get excited over nothing. "What kind of weird?" I asked. "The kind where 5 men are dead and it looks like something tore them apart. You better get up here." I grabbed my gear and headed out. The drive up to Copperhead Hollow took 45 minutes on winding mountain roads. The hollow sat in a bowl between 3 ridges, accessible only by a single-track dirt road that turned to mud when it rained. Cell phones didn't work up there. Radio signals were spotty. It was the perfect place for criminals to hide, and it was the perfect place for something else, too. Something I didn't believe in yet. The old-timers said Copperhead Hollow got its name from all the snakes, but my grandfather told a different story. He said back in the 1890s, a group of people had lived there who worshipped the devil. They'd carved pentagrams into trees and sacrificed animals under the full moon. One night, according to the story, they tried to summon something from hell itself. The ritual went wrong. Everyone died. The hollow had been cursed ever since. Just stories, I'd always thought. Mountain superstition. I pulled up to the crime scene and knew immediately this wasn't normal. 6 police cars and an ambulance sat parked along the dirt road. Deputies stood around looking pale and shaken. One was throwing up in the bushes. These were tough men, country boys who'd seen car wrecks and hunting accidents and all sorts of ugliness. Whatever was up there had gotten to them. Sheriff Hendricks met me at the tree line. His face was gray. "Marcus, I don't know how to explain what you're about to see. Try me. We got a tip about a meth lab up here. Anonymous call said there were 5 or 6 guys cooking. We came up to raid it and found." He stopped, searching for words. "It's like something went through them. Through all of them. The lab's destroyed, equipment torn apart, and the bodies. Show me." We walked into the woods, following a narrow trail. After about 100 yards, I smelled it, the chemical stink of a meth lab mixed with something else. Something sharp and sulfurous, like rotten eggs, like burning matches. Then I saw the clearing. The meth lab had been set up in an old hunting cabin, or rather, where a hunting cabin used to be. Now it was just kindling. The walls were smashed outward, as if something had exploded from inside. Cooking equipment lay scattered and twisted. Chemical containers were crushed flat, and there were the bodies. I've seen death. In war, you see it up close and personal. You learn to wall it off, to keep moving, to do your job. But this was different. This was savage in a way that made my Marine training seem inadequate. 5 men, all torn apart, not cut, not shot, torn. One body hung from a tree, impaled on a branch 12 feet off the ground. His chest was ripped open, and his ribs stuck out like broken fingers. Another was 20 feet away, in pieces. An arm here, a leg there, the torso split down the middle. The worst was the one near what used to be the cabin door. He'd been flayed, his skin peeled back from his muscles in long strips. His face was frozen in a scream. His eyes were gone. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "That's what I too said," Hendricks replied. "What could do this, Marcus? What animal?" I walked closer, careful not to disturb evidence. My law enforcement training kicked in automatically. Look for details, find the pattern, figure out what happened. The ground around the bodies was scorched, not burned, scorched, like someone had held a blowtorch to the dirt. The grass was black and brittle. Where I stepped, it crumbled to ash. Then I saw the prints. They were burned into solid rock, not pressed into mud or dirt, burned, seared, like someone had taken a brand and marked the stone itself. Each print was roughly the size of a dinner plate, but the shape was wrong. Too narrow at the heel, too wide at the front, and there were only 2 toes, or maybe they were hooves. "You seeing this?" I asked Hendricks. He nodded. "There's more. Follow them." The hoof prints led away from the clearing, toward the deeper woods. They appeared on rocks, on trees, even on vertical surfaces where nothing should be able to walk. Each one was burned into whatever it touched. We followed them for maybe 50 yards. Then they just stopped. Right in the middle of a game trail, the prints ended. Nothing beyond. It was like whatever made them had simply vanished into thin air. I looked up at the trees, down at the ground, all around. No explanation. "There's something else," Hendricks said quietly. "Look at the trees." I turned and saw what he meant. Carved into the bark of several large oaks were symbols, pentagrams, upside-down crosses. They'd been there a long time. The carvings were old, weathered, grown over in places. But someone had recently scratched away the overgrowth, revealing them again. "The drug runners?" I asked. "That's what I figured. Maybe they were into some kind of devil worship and it went bad. Maybe a rival gang found out and what?" I interrupted. "Tore them apart by hand? Burned footprints into solid rock? Come on, Tom. Then you explain it." I couldn't. Not then. We spent the rest of the day processing the scene. The state police came up, along with the medical examiner. Everyone had theories. Animal attack, maybe a bear. Gang violence with torture, PCP-fueled rage. Each explanation got weaker as more evidence came in. The M.E. pulled me aside before he left. "Doctor." Chen was a small, serious man who'd seen more dead bodies than anyone I knew. "Marcus, these wounds don't match any weapon I've ever seen. And I've seen everything, axes, machetes, chainsaws, you name it. These look like claw marks. But the force required." He shook his head. "A grizzly bear couldn't do this. Maybe a tiger, but we don't have tigers in West Virginia." "What about a person with a weapon?" I asked. "Look at this." He showed me photos of one victim's wounds. "See how the skin is torn? It's not cut, it's ripped. The muscle fibers are separated, not severed. Whatever did this grabbed the flesh and pulled. The force required would be immense. Inhuman." That word hung in the air. Inhuman. I drove home that night in silence. Sarah was waiting up for me. She took one look at my face and knew it was bad. "You okay?" she asked. 5 men dead up in Copperhead Hollow. "Drug dealers?" "Yeah, but the way they died." I stopped, not wanting to bring that darkness into our home. It was bad. real bad. She hugged me. You've seen bad before. Not like this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those hoofprints burned into stone, kept thinking about my grandfather's stories, about devil worshippers in Copperhead Hollow, about rituals gone wrong. Just stories, I told myself. There's a rational explanation, but deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I was starting to wonder. The next morning, I went to the county library. Old Mrs. Patterson ran the place. She'd been the librarian since before I was born. If anyone knew the history of Copperhead Hollow, it was her. "Marcus Bloodmoon," she said when I walked in. "Haven't seen you here in ages. What brings you by? I need to look at old newspapers and county records. Anything about Copperhead Hollow from the 1890 seconds." Her smile faded. "What's this about?" "Research for a case." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." She led me to the archive room in the basement, pulled out several boxes of yellowed newspapers and handwritten records. "The Hollow has a dark history," she said quietly. "Your grandfather knew about it. He tried to cleanse that place several times." "Cleanse it? From evil, Marcus. Real evil. Not the kind men do to each other. The other kind." "Mrs. Patterson, I don't." "You will," she said, and left me alone with the records. I spent 3 hours reading. Most of it was boring land deeds, tax records, census data. But then I found a newspaper article from October 1893. The headline read, "7 Dead in Devil Worship Tragedy." I read the article 3 times. It described how a group of people had been living in Copperhead Hollow, practicing dark rituals and communion with infernal powers. A traveling preacher, my great-great-grandfather, had gone up there to save their souls. He found them all dead, torn apart in ways the newspaper couldn't describe in detail. The article mentioned hoofprints burned into stone and the stench of sulfur. My hands were shaking when I finished reading. Just a coincidence, I told myself. Has to be. But I didn't believe it anymore. 3 days later, it happened again. This time, it was a different hollow, about 5 miles from the first location. Another meth lab. Another group of dealers. 4 dead this time. Same kind of violence. Same burned hoofprints. Same sulfur smell that lingered for hours afterward. The DEA got involved. Federal agents came up from Charleston, wanting to know what the hell was going on in the National Forest. They brought in trackers, forensic experts, even a profiler who specialized in cult crimes. None of them could explain it. I was sitting in a briefing with a dozen law enforcement officers when Agent Maria Santos from the DEA said what everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to say. "What if it's not human?" The room went quiet. "Explain," said her supervisor, a no-nonsense man named Collins. "The evidence doesn't match human capabilities. The strength required, the method of killing, she hesitated, the burned prints. I know how it sounds, but what if we're dealing with something else?" "Like what?" Collins asked. "A bear? A pack of wild dogs?" "I don't know, but we need to consider all possibilities." Collins shut her down immediately. "We deal in facts, Santos, not fairy tales. There's a rational explanation, and we're going to find it." But after the meeting, she pulled me aside. "You're a local," she said. "You know these mountains. What do the people around here say about Copperhead Hollow?" I debated lying. Then I told her the truth. "They say it's cursed. They say devil worshippers tried to summon something in the 1890 seconds, and it's been there ever since. They say it only comes out when evil people enter its territory." She didn't laugh. "And you? What do you say?" 3 weeks ago, I would have said that's nonsense. Now? I shook my head. Now I don't know what to think. That night, I went to see Reverend John Marsh. He was the oldest preacher in the county, 92 years old, sharp as a tack. He'd known my grandfather. I told him everything. The bodies, the hoofprints, the history. He listened without interrupting, his weathered hands folded on his desk. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Your grandfather fought it once," he finally said. "Fought what?" "The devil of Copperhead Hollow. That's what he called it. In 1952, there was a group of Siding 2B moonshiners working up there. 5 men died, torn apart just like you're describing. Your grandfather went up there with his Bible and his faith. He performed a ritual, a banishment. He said he saw it, Marcus. a creature with horns and wings and eyes like burning coals. He managed to drive it back, but he couldn't destroy it. Said it was bound to that place by the original summoning. As long as people commit evil there, it has power. You're saying there's actually a demon in Copperhead Hollow. I'm saying your grandfather believed there was, and he was the most honest, faithful man I ever knew. He wasn't given to flights of fancy. How do I stop it? You probably can't. But your grandfather left notes, instructions. They're in the church basement, in his old papers. You're welcome to look. I spent the next morning going through boxes of my grandfather's belongings. Most of it was sermon notes and correspondence. But in the bottom of the last box, I found a leather journal. The entries were dated 1952. They described exactly what I was seeing now, the hoof prints, the violence, the sulfur smell. And they described the thing my grandfather had encountered. It stands 9 feet tall, he wrote. Its body is like a man's, but twisted and wrong. It has horns like a ram, wings like a bat, and hooves instead of feet. Its eyes glow red like coals from hell. When it speaks, the voice is many voices layered together, all speaking in perfect unison. It told me its name, but I will not write it here. To write the name is to give it power. It was summoned by the cult in 1893. They wanted power, revenge against their enemies, wealth. They performed a ritual from a book they'd obtained, a genuine grimoire of black magic. The ritual worked, but they couldn't control what they'd summoned. It killed them all. And now it's bound to that hollow, neither fully in our world nor fully in hell. It hunts those who commit evil within its territory. It punishes them. But it cannot distinguish between great evil and small sin. A man who kills is the same to it as a man who steals, and its power is growing. The journal went on to describe the ritual my grandfather had used to drive it back. It required holy water, blessed salt, specific prayers, and most importantly, a sacrifice. Something precious to the person performing the ritual. Something that represented pride or attachment to worldly things. My grandfather had sacrificed his father's pocket watch, a family heirloom he'd treasured. I closed the journal, my mind racing. This was insane. Demons weren't real, but the evidence said otherwise, and if I didn't do something, more people would die. Even if those people were criminals, they didn't deserve that kind of death. Nobody did. That afternoon, I got a call from Sheriff Hendricks. Marcus, we got a problem. The Volkov brothers just set up a new operation in the Hollow. Big one, they're processing product for half the state, and word is they know about the killings. They're daring whatever's up there to come after them. They've got 20 armed men. When did they move in? Yesterday. They're fortified guns, armor, the works. They think they can handle anything. They can't. I know. But we can't get a warrant fast enough. They'll be up there for at least 3 more days. 3 days. 20 men. All of them about to die unless I did something. I made a decision I still question to this day. I went up to Copperhead Hollow alone. It was late afternoon when I arrived. The sun was already dropping behind the western ridge, throwing long shadows across the hollow. I parked a mile away and hiked in on foot, carrying my service weapon, a flashlight, and my grandfather's journal. I could hear generators running as I got close. Voices, music. The Volkovs were treating this like a party. Idiots. I reached the edge of their camp and stopped. They'd set up in the same clearing where the first group had died. 20 men, just like Hendricks said. They had guns, lights, even a couple of dogs tied to trees. The cabin they were using was reinforced with steel plates. They'd turned it into a fortress. None of it would matter. I watched from the tree line as the sun set. The men were confident, laughing, passing around bottles. A few of them made jokes about the devil that supposedly haunted the hollow. They stopped laughing when the temperature dropped. It happened fast. One moment it was a mild September evening. The next, I could see my breath. Frost formed on the grass. The dogs started barking, then whimpering, then fell silent. The generators died. All the lights went out at once. In the sudden darkness, I heard it. Hoofsteps. Slow, deliberate. Coming from deeper in the hollow. The men heard it too. They grabbed their guns, shouting to each other, trying to get the lights back on. Someone fired a flare. It shot up into the sky, illuminating the clearing in harsh red light. That's when I saw it for the first time. It stood at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the tree line. 9 feet tall, exactly as my grandfather had described. Its body was humanoid but wrong, too thin, too angular, skin the color of old leather. Its head bore massive curved horns, wings spread behind it, leathery and torn, and its eyes burned with internal fire, casting red light across the ground. The men started shooting. Bullets hit it, I saw the impacts. But it didn't slow down, it didn't even flinch. It just started walking toward them. The first man died in seconds. The demon moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. One moment it was 20 feet away. The next, it had torn through the man's body armor like paper. Blood sprayed across the clearing. Chaos erupted. Men ran in all directions. Some tried to fight. Some tried to hide. None of it mattered. I watched, frozen, as it killed them one by one. It was methodical, efficient. It would grab a man, tear him apart, then move to the next. Their bullets might as well have been raindrops. 5 men made it to vehicles and tried to drive away. The demon appeared in front of the first truck. It just materialized there, as if stepping through a door I couldn't see. It flipped the truck over, 2-ton vehicle, and it flipped it like it was a toy. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of there. But I couldn't move. I was witnessing something impossible, something that violated every law of nature I understood. And then it saw me. Its head turned, those burning eyes fixing on me. Across 100 feet of darkness, it looked directly at me, and it smiled. The demon didn't come for me, not right away. Instead, it finished with the Volkov brothers. 10 minutes of systematic slaughter. When it was done, 20 men lay dead in the clearing. The demon stood among the bodies, blood steaming in the cold air. Then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Layered, like my grandfather had written. Dozens of voices speaking as one, male and female, young and old. Marcus Bloodmoon, son of John, grandson of Samuel, you have returned. I found my voice. I never left. Your grandfather tried to banish me. He failed. He drove you back. For a time. The demon walked toward me, hooves leaving burned prints in the grass. But I remain. I have always remained. This is my ground. My territory. Given to me by those who summoned me, sealed by their blood and mine. You're killing people. I am punishing evil. That was my purpose. That is my nature. These men were criminals, but they didn't deserve this. The demon stopped 10 feet away. Up close, it was even more terrible. The details my grandfather couldn't fully capture. The way its skin moved like it wasn't quite solid, the heat radiating from its body. The smell of sulfur and burnt flesh. Evil is evil, it said. There are no degrees in hell. A thief burns alongside a murderer. A liar suffers with a killer. Your grandfather understood this, do you? I understand you're going to kill more people if I don't stop you. It laughed. The sound echoed through the hollow, bouncing off the ridges. Stop me? You? With what? Your faith is weak, Marcus Bloodmoon. You abandoned your grandfather's church. You do not believe as he believed. You cannot banish me. It was right. I hadn't been to church in 20 years. I'd stopped believing in God after I came home from the war. How could I fight a demon when I didn't even believe in heaven? But then I thought about Sarah, about my daughters, about the grandchild I'd never meet if this thing killed me, about all the people who'd die if it kept growing stronger. Maybe I can't banish you, I said, but I can try. The demon tilted its head, studying me. You would sacrifice yourself? For criminals and sinners? For everyone. Because that's what we do. We protect people, even when they don't deserve it. Then face me, Ranger. Face me, and I will show you what your grandfather saw. I will show you every evil deed committed in this hollow, every sin, every crime, every dark thought. I will show you the truth of humanity, and then I will tear you apart. It reached for me. I don't know what made me do it, instinct, maybe, or muscle memory from my grandfather's journal. But I pulled out the vial of holy water I'd brought and threw it. The water hit the demon's chest and burst into steam. The demon shrieked an ear-splitting sound that echoed through the mountains. It staggered back, smoke rising from where the water had touched it. It could be hurt. Not easily, not permanently, but it could be hurt. The demon roared and charged. I ran. Back through the woods, toward my truck, the demon crashing through the trees behind me. Branches exploded, rocks shattered under its hooves. It was toying with me, I realized. It could catch me any time it wanted, but it wanted me to be afraid first. I made it to my truck and grabbed the bag I'd prepared. Holy water. Salt blessed by Reverend Marsh. My grandfather's Bible. And the medals from my Marine service, the things I was most proud of, the symbols of my identity. The demon emerged from the tree line as I turned around. "Running, Ranger?" "No," I said. "Preparing." I began to read from the journal, reciting the words my grandfather had written. Latin phrases I didn't fully understand, but I pronounced them carefully, exactly as written. The demon flinched. "You do not have the faith," it hissed. "These words are meaningless from your lips." "Maybe," I said. "But they still hurt you, don't they?" I kept reading, walking in a circle, pouring the blessed salt in a line around us. The demon tried to cross it but pulled back, smoke rising from its hooves. "The salt binds you," I said, remembering my grandfather's notes. "It creates a barrier. You can't leave until the ritual is complete. Then I will kill you inside the circle." It lunged. I dove aside, barely avoiding its claws. They raked across my truck, shredding metal like tinfoil. I rolled, came up, splashed more holy water. The demon screamed. We fought in that circle for what felt like hours. It was faster, stronger, nearly invincible. But the holy water hurt it. The salt kept it contained. And the prayers, even from my doubting lips, seemed to weaken it. But I was running out of water, out of time, out of strength. The demon grabbed me, lifted me off the ground. Its face was inches from mine, eyes burning. "You cannot win," it said. "You are nothing, a man, weak, mortal, faithless." "You're right," I gasped. "I am weak. I don't have my grandfather's faith. I don't believe like he did." "Then die." "But I believe in something," I continued. "I believe in protecting people. I believe in sacrifice. And I believe that evil, real evil, can be fought. Even if I'm not perfect, even if I doubt, even if I'm scared." I pulled out my medals, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, all of them, the things I'd treasured for 30 years. Proof that I'd mattered, that I'd done something important. "I offer this sacrifice," I said, reading the final words from the journal. "My pride, my glory, my worldly treasure, take it and be gone, demon. Return to hell. This ground is cleansed by faith and sacrifice." I threw the medals into the center of the salt circle. They burst into flames, blue flames that spread across the ground, racing along the salt line. The demon shrieked and thrashed, trying to escape. But the circle held. The flames grew higher, brighter, until I had to look away. The demon's screams echoed through the hollow, growing fainter and fainter. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the demon was gone. The flames had died. My medals were gone too, consumed completely. The salt circle remained, but the air felt different. Lighter, cleaner. The curse was broken. I drove down from Copperhead Hollow as the sun rose. My body ached, my clothes were torn and bloody. But I was alive. Sheriff Hendricks met me at the ranger station. He took one look at me and didn't ask questions. Not the real questions, anyway. "The Volkov brothers?" he asked. "Dead, all of them." "How?" "Gang warfare," I said, using the cover story we'd agreed on. "They must have had enemies we didn't know about." He nodded slowly. We both knew it was a lie. But some truths are too dangerous to speak out loud. The federal agents spent another week investigating. They found the bodies. They documented the evidence. They wrote reports that would be classified and forgotten. In the end, the official story was that rival drug dealers had massacred the Volkov operation. Case closed. Agent Santos pulled me aside before she left. "You know what really happened up there," she said. It wasn't a question. Do I? Whatever it was, it's over now. I can feel it. The hollow feels normal again. Maybe it was always normal. Maybe we just imagined the rest. She smiled sadly. Maybe. But I'm not going back up there. Ever. And if you're smart, neither will you. I took her advice. For the most part. I started going back to church. Not because I suddenly believed everything, but because I'd learned that faith wasn't about certainty. It was about hope. About believing that good could triumph over evil, even when the odds seemed impossible. Sarah noticed the change in me. She didn't ask why, just held my hand during the hymns and told me she was proud. My daughters visited more often. I played with my grandkids and told them stories about the forest, the good stories, the ones about beauty and wonder and nature's miracles. But sometimes, late at night, I'd pull out my grandfather's journal and read his entries. He'd faced the demon and survived. So had I. We'd both sacrificed something precious. We'd both learned that evil, real evil, exists in this world, and so does the strength to fight it. 6 months after the incident, I was called to investigate a complaint about illegal logging in the national forest. The site was deep in the mountains, near a place called Devil's Backbone. When I arrived, I found 3 men dead, torn apart, hoofprints burned into stone. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the evidence. Then I got back in my truck and drove to see Reverend Marsh. "It's not over," I told him. "Evil never is," he replied, "but neither is our duty to fight it." He gave me another vial of holy water. Blessed more salt, helped me understand the prayers better. Because I'd learned something in Copperhead Hollow, something my grandfather knew and his father before him. Our mountains have dark places. Places where the barrier between our world and hell grows thin. Places where ancient evils can seep through if we're not vigilant. Someone has to watch those places. Someone has to be ready. I'm Marcus Bloodmoon. I'm 50 years old now. I've got 7 more years until retirement, and I'll spend them doing what my family has done for generations. I'll protect these mountains, even from things that shouldn't exist. Especially from those things, because I've seen the devil of Copperhead Hollow. I've looked into its burning eyes. I've heard its voice promising damnation. And I've learned that the only thing standing between evil and innocent people is someone willing to face the darkness. That someone is me. And when I retire, I'll pass my grandfather's journal to someone else. Someone who can handle the truth. Someone who'll keep watching the dark places long after I'm gone. Because the demons are still out there. And so are we. My name is Jackson Grimwald, and I've been a forest ranger in the Ouachita National Forest for 20 years. That's 2 decades of broken bones set in the backcountry, lost hikers found half dead from dehydration, and enough paperwork to fill a logging truck. I'm 48 years old now, married to Sarah for 25 years, got 3 grown kids who think their old man's job is boring as dirt. They're wrong about that. I grew up in these Arkansas woods. My grandfather was a logger. My father was a logger, and I would have been one too if I hadn't seen what clear-cutting does to a forest. So I switched sides, I guess you could say. Put on the ranger uniform instead of carrying a chainsaw. Some of the old-timers in town still won't talk to me because of it. I'm a big guy, 6'1", barrel-chested, with hands like catcher's mitts from years of hard work. I move slow and think slower, which Sarah says is my best quality. "You don't rush into things, Jack," she tells me. "You watch and wait." That patience saved my life more than once. The Kiamichi Mountains are my territory, the remote timber areas where most rangers don't like to patrol. Too isolated, too quiet. I've heard every local legend there is about these woods. The Fook monster, Bigfoot, the Boggy Creek creature, all that nonsense that brings tourists and their cameras every summer. I never believed any of it. 20 years in these forests, and the scariest thing I'd ever seen was a methamphetamine cook site, until the spring of 1976. It started on a Tuesday morning in April. I was drinking coffee in the ranger station when Bill Hodges from Ouachita Timber Company called. Bill was old school, never called unless there was real trouble. "Jackson, we got a situation at the Hollow Ridge site," he said. His voice sounded tight. "Can you come out here?" "What kind of situation?" "Just come see for yourself. And bring a camera." The Hollow Ridge site was 40 minutes of dirt roads into the deep forest. This was old-growth territory, trees that had been standing since before Arkansas was a state. The timber company had permits to log the outer sections, but even they knew to leave the ancient grove alone. Those trees were protected by every environmental law on the books. When I pulled up to the site, I knew something was very wrong. The logging equipment was scattered across the clearing like a child's toys. A bulldozer sat on its side, which shouldn't be possible. Those things weigh 15 tons. A crane's arm was bent at an angle that would take a tornado to achieve. And the logs, Jesus, the logs. Full-size pine logs, each weighing maybe 800 pounds, were stacked in neat piles 50 yards from where they'd been cut. Not dragged, there were no drag marks in the dirt. Just moved. Placed. Bill Hodges stood in the middle of it all, his hard hat in his hands. 3 of his crew stood with him, and they all had the same look on their faces. The look people get when they can't explain what they're seeing. "When did this happen?" I asked. "Last night. We shut down at 6. Everything was normal. Came back at 7 this morning and found this." Bill pointed at the bulldozer. "That's $60,000 of equipment, Jackson. And look at the treads." I looked. The massive rubber treads had been torn completely off the wheels. Not cut, torn. Like someone had peeled them away with their bare hands. "Vandalism," I said. But my voice didn't sound sure even to myself. "With what? What kind of equipment could do this?" I didn't have an answer. That's when I saw the handprint. We'd poured a concrete pad the week before for a new equipment shed. The concrete had been wet enough yesterday to still take an impression. Now, pressed deep into the hardened surface, was a handprint. I got down on my knees to look at it closer. It was 18 inches across. 18 inches. My hand barely covered 7 inches of it. The fingers were thick as broom handles, and the thumb was on the wrong side. Or maybe the right side, if you were looking at it from a different angle. It had opposable thumbs like a human, but the proportions were all wrong. "Could be a bear," one of the crew members said. Nobody else said anything. We all knew what bear prints looked like. "I'll file a report," I told Bill. "Probably kids with some kind of equipment. Maybe they got a crane in here somehow." But I didn't believe that. And from the look on Bill's face, neither did he. I took photos, measured everything, filled out my incident report back at the station with words that felt like lies. Then I did what I always did when something didn't make sense. I called my buddy Tom Birch at the State Wildlife Office. "Tom, you ever heard of an animal that can flip a 15-ton bulldozer? A really angry elephant? I'm serious." "So am I. Nothing in Arkansas can do that, Jack. Nothing natural." That word hung in the air between us. Natural. I went back to the site that evening, alone. I don't know why. Maybe because I'd been a ranger for 20 years and thought I knew these woods. Maybe because that handprint bothered me in a way I couldn't explain. The sun was setting, painting the pine trees orange and red. I parked my truck and walked the perimeter of the clearing. The forest was quiet, too quiet, no birds, no insects, just wind moving through the branches. That's when I found the tracks. They started at the edge of the old-growth section, where the ancient trees began. Footprints, deep in the soft earth. Each one was 22 inches long and pressed down almost 4 inches into the ground. I measured the stride length with my tape measure. 12 feet between steps. 12 feet. I've tracked bear, deer, mountain lion. I know what animal tracks look like. These had 5 toes, like a human foot. But the size, whatever made, these tracks had to be at least 10 feet tall. Maybe more. I followed the tracks into the tree line, my hand resting on the can of bear spray on my belt. Not that bear spray would do much good against whatever made prints this size. The tracks led me about 100 yards into the forest. Then stopped. Just stopped. Right in the middle of a clearing. I looked around, trying to figure out where they went next, but there was nothing. It was like whatever made them had just vanished into thin air. That's when I felt it. Someone was watching me. You know that feeling, right? When the hair on the back of your neck stands up and your stomach goes tight? I've felt it before, usually, right before I stumble on a bear or a pack of feral dogs. But this was different. This felt intelligent, focused. I turned slowly, scanning the tree line. Nothing. Just shadows getting longer as the sun dropped. "Hello?" My voice sounded small in the quiet. "This is ranger territory. If someone's out here, identify yourself." The trees rustled, but there was no wind. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the forest. Something moved between the trees, something huge, but when I blinked, it was gone. Maybe just shadows. Maybe my imagination. I made it back to my truck and locked the doors, which is something I'd never done before in 20 years. My hands shook as I started the engine. The next morning, Bill called again. "It happened again," he said. "You need to see this." This time, it was worse. The entire worksite had been destroyed. Not scattered, destroyed. The equipment shed we'd been building was torn apart, the lumber broken into pieces too small to be useful. The concrete pad with the handprint had been cracked straight down the middle, like something had jumped on it with enormous force, and in the dirt, spelled out in logs arranged like giant letters, "Leave." "That's it," Bill said. "I'm not bringing my crew back here until this is sorted out. I got families, Jackson. I can't risk someone getting hurt." "Smart move," I said, but I knew it wasn't sorted out. It was just getting started. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those tracks, about that handprint, about the feeling of being watched. Sarah asked me what was wrong, but I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell your wife that something impossible is happening in the woods where you work? Around 2 a.m, my phone rang. It was Tom Birch. "Jack, you need to come to my office tomorrow. I sent those hair samples you collected to the state lab. The results came back. And they don't match any known animal in North America." Tom's office at the state wildlife headquarters was covered in maps and photos. He handed me the lab report as soon as I walked in. "Primate DNA," he said. "But the closest match is gorilla, and that's only about 60%. The rest is, well, they don't know what it is." I read the report twice. The words didn't make any more sense the second time. So what does that mean? It means either we've discovered a new species, or something that shouldn't exist does exist. Tom sat down hard in his chair. "Jack, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've never seen anything like this. What do I tell the timber company? Tell them the truth. There's something in those woods, and until we know what it is, they shouldn't be logging there." But Bill Hodges didn't want to hear it. The timber company had deadlines, contracts, money invested. He called me 3 times that day, each time more angry than the last. "I'm bringing in security," he finally said. "Night watchmen with cameras will catch whoever's doing this." "Bill, I don't think that's a good." He hung up on me. The security footage arrived at my office 2 days later. Bill had it sent over without calling first, just a padded envelope with a USB drive inside. I watched it on my computer, and I watched it again, and then I called Tom to come watch it with me because I needed someone else to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. The timestamp said 2:47 a.m. The camera was pointed at the equipment yard, clear night vision footage. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Then, at the edge of the frame, something moved. It was massive, at least 11 feet tall, covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb the light. It moved into the clearing with a strange, hunched posture, not quite walking on all fours, but not fully upright either. When it reached the bulldozer, it grabbed the machine with both hands and simply lifted it. 15 tons, lifted like it weighed nothing. The creature turned, and for just a second, its face came into view. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't an ape. It was something in between, with eyes that reflected the camera's infrared light in a way that made my stomach turn. Then it threw the bulldozer. The machine flew 30 feet through the air and crashed into a pile of lumber. The creature watched it land, then turned and looked directly at the camera. Those glowing eyes stared right into the lens for what felt like forever. Then it simply walked back into the forest, moving between the trees so smoothly it barely disturbed the branches. Tom and I sat in silence for a long time after the video ended. "What the hell was that?" he finally asked. "I don't know. But that was a lie." Deep down, somewhere in the part of my brain that still remembered childhood fears and campfire stories, I knew exactly what it was. My grandfather used to tell me stories about the old-growth forests, about things that lived in the deep woods where no one logged. He called them forest guardians, protectors of the ancient trees. I'd thought they were just stories. I drove out to the Choctaw Cultural Center that afternoon. The woman at the desk gave me a strange look when I asked about local legends, but she directed me to an elderly man named James Sixkiller who volunteered there. James listened to my story without interrupting. When I was done, he nodded slowly. "Nalucephalia," he said. "The long black being. My grandmother's grandmother spoke of them. They protect the old places, the sacred groves. When loggers came in the 1800s, the Nalucephalia fought back. Many men died. How do you stop it? You don't stop it, you respect it. Leave the old trees alone. The timber company has permits. They're not going to stop." James looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "Then more men will die." He was right. 3 days later, Bill Hodges called me at 5 in the morning. His voice was shaking so bad I could barely understand him. "There's been an accident. You need to come now." The foreman, a guy named Dale Pritchard, was dead. They'd found him at the work site, crushed under a pine log that weighed close to a ton. The log had been thrown, the impact pattern made that clear. Thrown from the tree line with enough force to kill a man instantly. Dale had a wife and 2 kids. I'd met them at the company picnic last summer. The sheriff ruled it an industrial accident. "Logging operations were dangerous," he said. "These things happened. But I saw the trajectory of that log. I saw how far it had traveled. No equipment on site could have thrown it that far. The creature was escalating." That night, I went into my garage and pulled out my grandfather's old journals. He'd been a logger in these same mountains back in the 1922. I'd kept his journals after he died, even though I'd never really read them. They were just memories, I thought. Old stories. I found the entry dated August 1923. Asterisk, lost another man today. Something in the deep woods, beyond where we're supposed to cut. Men say it's a haunt, a forest devil. All I know is it throws trees like matchsticks and screams like nothing I've ever heard. Boss says we push forward anyway. The old-growth timber is worth too much. God help us. Asterisk, my grandfather had known. He'd seen it. And he'd kept logging anyway. The next entry was dated 3 days later. Asterisk, made a deal with the thing in the woods. It showed itself to me, stood as tall as 2 men. We agreed on boundaries. It keeps to the deep forest. We keep to the outer sections. No more deaths. But I know what I saw, and I know what it protects. Some trees ain't meant to be cut. Asterisk, I sat in my garage until dawn, reading those journals. My grandfather had drawn a map in the back pages, marking the boundaries he'd agreed to. The protected zone included everything in the ancient grove section, the exact area where the timber company was planning their next logging operation. The operation scheduled to start in 5 days. I called Bill and told him about the journals, about the boundaries, about everything. He listened, then he laughed. "Jack, are you seriously telling me to shut down a $1 million operation because your grandfather made a deal with Bigfoot? I'm telling you, people are going to die if you cut those trees." One person died. That's tragic, but it was an accident. We're not stopping. In fact, we're bringing in hunters. Professional game hunters with high-powered rifles. If there's some kind of bear or ape out there, they'll handle it. Bill, please. The clear cut starts Monday. Be there or don't. He hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my grandfather's map. Sarah came down in her bathrobe, her hair messy from sleep. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Worse," I told her. "I've seen the future." Sunday night, I drove back to the site alone. I parked my truck at the clearing's edge and walked into the forest, carrying only a flashlight and my grandfather's journal. The trees seemed to lean in closer as I walked. The ancient pines towered overhead. Some of them probably 500 years old. Their roots went deep, connecting underground in ways scientists were just starting to understand. These trees had been here before America was a country. Before Europeans came to this continent, they'd survived ice ages and droughts and fires. Now they were going to fall to chainsaws because of logging permits and profit margins. I walked until I reached the deepest part of the grove, where the trees grew so thick the moonlight barely touched the ground. Then I stopped and called out, "I know you're here. I know what you are." My grandfather knew too. The forest went silent. Even the wind stopped. "They're coming tomorrow. Men with guns and chainsaws. They're going to cut these trees down, and you can't stop all of them. You're just one creature, even if you're strong. They'll kill you, or you'll kill them, but either way, the trees will fall." Something moved in the darkness ahead of me, not hiding now, coming forward. It stepped into the small pool of moonlight, and I finally saw it clearly. 11 feet tall, maybe 12, covered in dark fur that seemed to blend with the shadows. Its face was almost human flat, with a pronounced brow and deep-set eyes that gleamed with intelligence. The hands were massive, with thick fingers and opposable thumbs. It moved with a strange grace, silent despite its size. But what struck me most were its eyes. There was something ancient in those eyes, something that had watched these forests for longer than I could imagine. It spoke, not in words, I can't really explain it, It was more like thoughts that appeared in my head, carried on something deeper than sound. Images flooded my mind. The forest as it used to be, stretching unbroken for thousands of miles. Other creatures like this one, dozens of them, maintaining the balance. Then the images shifted, axes and saws, fire and destruction. The other creatures dying one by one as their forests fell. This one, the last, guardian of this grove, growing weaker as its territory shrank. I understood. It couldn't leave. It was bound to these trees somehow, part of them in a way that went beyond biology. When they died, it would die too. "I'm sorry," I said. My voice cracked. "I'm so sorry for what we've done." The creature tilted its head, studying me. Then it did something I didn't expect. It turned and walked deeper into the grove, pausing to look back as if it wanted me to follow. I followed. It led me to the heart of the ancient grove, where the oldest trees stood. Some of them were so massive it would take 10 men holding hands to circle their trunks. In the center was a pine that must have been growing since the 1400s, its bark thick and gnarled with age. The creature placed one massive hand on the tree, and I felt it a pulse, like a heartbeat, running through the ground beneath my feet. These trees were alive in a way I'd never understood before. They were connected, communicating, remembering. And this creature was part of that network, that ancient system that humans had spent centuries destroying. It showed me something else than what would happen if the grove fell. The erosion, the flash floods, the collapse of the entire mountain ecosystem. These trees held the mountain together. Cut them down, and within 10 years, the whole region would be barren. The timber company didn't know, or maybe they didn't care. "I can't stop them alone," I said. "I'm just one ranger. I don't have that kind of authority." The creature looked at me with those ancient eyes, and I felt its question. Asterisk. Then, what good are you? Asterisk. That hit harder than any physical blow. 20 years I'd worn this uniform. 20 years I'd told myself I was protecting these forests. But when it mattered most, I was powerless. Or was I? I thought about my grandfather's journals, about the deal he'd made, about the men who died when that deal was broken. "I can try," I said. "I can't promise anything, but I can try." The creature watched me for a long moment, then nodded an oddly human gesture. It faded back into the shadows, but I knew it would be watching, waiting. I walked back to my truck and drove straight to the sheriff's office, even though it was almost midnight. Sheriff Boyd wasn't happy to see me, but he listened as I explained the situation. I showed him the security footage, my grandfather's journals, the photos of Dale Pritchard's death scene. "What exactly are you asking me to do, Jack?" "Shut down the logging operation, at least temporarily, until we can figure out, on what grounds, that there's a monster in the woods." He shook his head. "I've known you 20 years. You're a good man. But this is crazy talk. Dale Pritchard is dead. 2 hunters were found dead last week. Did you hear about that? Mauled, they said. What do you think mauled them? Bears. Mountain lions. Something natural. Look at the footage again. Tell me that's natural." He looked, and I saw doubt flicker across his face. But doubt wasn't enough. I can't shut down a legal operation because of a grainy video and old campfire stories. "I'm sorry." I left his office and sat in my truck, trying to think. The operation would start in 8 hours. Men would arrive with chainsaws and logging equipment, and they'd start cutting. And the creature would respond, because it had no choice. More people would die, unless I stopped them. The idea came to me slowly, like something dredging up from deep water. It was crazy. It would probably cost me my job, maybe land me in jail, but it was the only option I had left. I drove back to the logging site and got to work. The equipment was all diesel-powered bulldozers, cranes, chainsaws. I spent the next 4 hours going from machine to machine, doing things I'd learned from my grandfather. Sugar in the fuel tanks, cut hydraulic lines, disabled ignitions. On the time I was done, nothing at that site would run for more than 30 seconds before breaking down. Then I took the bolt cutters from my truck and cut down every tree-marking ribbon the company had put up. I gathered them in a pile and burned them, along with their survey stakes. Finally, I called Tom Birch. "I need you to do something for me," I said. "And you can't ask questions." "Jack, it's 4 in the morning. "I know. Listen, I'm going to send you GPS coordinates. I need you to file an emergency environmental assessment for that area. Claim there's endangered species habitat. Whatever you have to do to get federal investigators out here. That could take weeks to process. I just need a few days. Can you do it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "You're going to get us both fired." "Probably." "Okay, send me the coordinates." The sun was coming up when I drove back to the ranger station. I wrote out my report, documenting everything: the creature, the deaths, the evidence. I knew no one would believe it, but I also knew it needed to be on record. Then I went home, kissed Sarah, and waited for the phone to ring. It rang at 9 a.m., Bill Hodges, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What did you do?" "The equipment's destroyed. The surveys are gone." "Do you have any idea how much money?" "There's an endangered species investigation," I said calmly. "Federal. The site's locked down pending assessment." "You son of a..." "I'm just following protocol, Bill. If there's a protected species in that grove, it's illegal to log there. You know that." He made threats. Said he'd have my badge. Said he'd sue me personally. I let him talk until he ran out of steam, then I hung up. 2 days later, I got called into my supervisor's office. They suspended me pending investigation. They used words like sabotage and destruction of property. I didn't argue, but Tom's emergency assessment had bought us time. Federal investigators would take at least 2 weeks to examine the site, and in those 2 weeks, something interesting happened. The local news picked up the story. Environmental groups started asking questions. A biology professor from the university came out to look at the hair samples and declared them potentially significant. The story grew bigger, and suddenly the timber company was under scrutiny. Someone leaked the security footage to the internet. It went viral. 3 weeks later, standing in the same supervisor's office where I'd been suspended, I learned that the ancient grove had been designated a protected research area. No logging allowed pending long-term ecological study. They fired me anyway. 20 years of service, gone. But I didn't care. I went back to the grove one last time, on a cool evening in October. The leaves were turning gold and red, and the ancient pines stood tall against the sunset. The creature was there, waiting at the edge of the clearing. It didn't need to speak. I felt its gratitude like warmth spreading through my chest. "They're safe," I said. "The trees are protected now, at least these ones." It nodded, that same human gesture. Then it did something I'll never forget. It reached out one massive hand and placed it gently on my shoulder. Just for a moment. The touch was surprisingly gentle for something so powerful. Then it turned and walked back into the deep forest, disappearing among the trees it had protected for who knows how long. I never saw it again. Sarah says I did the right thing. The kids think their old man went crazy at the end, lost his job chasing Bigfoot. They laugh about it at Thanksgiving. But I know what I saw. I know what's out there. I took my grandfather's journals and started documenting other sites across Arkansas. Places where old-growth forests still stood. Places where there were stories of strange creatures and unexplained disappearances. I reached out to other retired rangers, other forestry workers who'd seen things they couldn't explain. Turns out I wasn't alone. There's a network of us now, people who know the truth about what lives in the deep forests. We watch the logging permits, we document the sightings, we protect what we can, when we can. Because the creature in Hollow Ridge wasn't alone. There are others out there, in the last fragments of ancient forest that somehow survived. Each one guarding their grove, growing weaker as their territory shrinks. They're dying out. Slowly but surely, as progress marches forward and chainsaws roar and the forests fall. But not in Hollow Ridge. Those trees still stand. And on quiet nights, when I drive past that protected grove, I sometimes see a shadow moving among the pines. Something massive and ancient, keeping watch. My grandfather made a deal with the forest guardian in 1923. He kept that deal until the day he died. I made my own deal that night in the grove, and I'll keep it too. The timber company settled out of court. They didn't want the bad publicity, not with the footage out there and environmental groups watching. I used the settlement money to buy a small cabin at the edge of the national forest. Sarah and I live there now, and I spend my days hiking the trails I used to patrol. Sometimes people ask me if I really believe in Bigfoot. If I think there are monsters in the woods, I tell them the only monsters I've ever met were human. The ones who'd cut down 500-year-old trees for profit, the ones who'd destroy an entire ecosystem for quarterly earnings. But I also tell them that there are things in the deep forests that we don't understand. Ancient things that were here long before us. Things that deserve respect and protection and maybe a little bit of fear. Because fear, real fear, keeps us careful. Keeps us from going too far, taking too much, destroying what can never be replaced. Late at night, when the wind moves through the pines outside my window, I sometimes hear something that sounds like a cry echoing from the deep mountains. Not quite human, not quite animal, just a sound that reminds me that I'm not alone in these woods. That something is still out there, watching over the places we haven't ruined yet. And I sleep better knowing that, because as long as those guardians survive, as long as those ancient groves stand, there's still hope. Hope that we might learn to live with the forest instead of just taking from it. Hope that my grandkids might grow up in a world where 500-year-old trees are protected, not because of permits and regulations, but because people finally understand what's worth saving. My name is Jackson Grimwald. I spent 20 years as a forest ranger, and I lost my job protecting a grove of ancient trees from destruction. It was the best thing I ever did. And if you ever find yourself hiking in the Ouachita National Forest, in the deep sections where the old-growth pines still stand, and you feel like something's watching you from the shadows, don't run. Don't panic. Just show some respect. Stay on the trails. Leave the ancient trees alone, because the guardians are still out there, and they're still keeping watch. My name is Catherine Moonwhisper, and I've been a ranger in Jefferson National Forest for 12 years. Before that, I was a veterinarian. I thought changing careers meant I'd see less death. I was wrong. It's September 1981, and I'm standing in my kitchen making breakfast for my daughter, Emma. She's 10 years old and refuses to eat anything except scrambled eggs with cheese. Through the window, I can see Devil's Backbone Ridge cutting across the morning sky like a jagged scar. "Mom, did you hear the cat again last night?" Emma asks. I flip the eggs, keeping my voice calm. "Honey, we've talked about this. There are no big cats watching our house." "But I saw her." Emma's voice drops to a whisper. She was standing on two legs. My hand tightens on the spatula. For 3 nights now, Emma has insisted something watches our house after dark. I've checked. I've found nothing. But this morning, there are scratch marks on our back porch I can't explain. The radio on the counter crackles. "Moonwhisper, you there?" I grab the handset. "This is Moonwhisper. Go ahead. We've got a situation up on the Backbone Trail. Family with kids called in something following them. They're pretty shaken up." "What kind of something?" Static fills the pause. "They said it looked like a mountain lion, but it had 6 legs." I close my eyes. I'm on my way. An hour later, I'm standing with the Henderson family in the parking lot at the trailhead. Mr. Henderson is pale, gripping his wife's hand. Their 2 kids hide behind them. "It was huge," Mr. Henderson says, "maybe 7 feet long. And I know this sounds crazy, but 6 legs," I finish. "You're not the first person to report this." Relief washes over his face. "So you believe us?" "I believe they saw something that scared them badly. That's my job, to figure out what it really was. Probably just a regular mountain lion, and frightened people counting legs wrong in the chaos. It happens." "Let me take a look at where you saw it," I say. The trail up Devil's Backbone is steep, winding through oak and pine forest. I've walked this path hundreds of times. I know every switchback, every rocky outcrop. The Henderson family saw their creature about 2 miles up, near the old overlook. When I reach the spot, I find tracks immediately. My stomach drops. I've tracked mountain lions before. I've seen bear prints, bobcat prints, even the rare track from someone's escaped exotic pet. But these tracks are wrong in a way that makes my veterinary training scream. 4 paw prints, mountain lion definitely, but between them, 2 human footprints, bare feet, adult-sized, and they're not separate tracks, they're together, like one animal made all 6 prints at the same time. I photograph everything, my hands shaking slightly. Then I notice the direction the tracks lead. Straight up, a vertical cliff face. 20 feet of bare rock, and the tracks go right up it like gravity means nothing. "That's not possible," I whisper. But the tracks don't care what's possible. They just are. That evening, I drive to see Thomas Whitefeather. He's a Cherokee elder, 93 years old, and he knows these mountains better than anyone alive. My grandmother introduced us before she died last year. She told me if I ever found something in these woods I couldn't explain, Thomas would have answers. He lives in a small cabin that smells like tobacco and cedar. When I show him the photographs, his face goes very still. "You found the Wampus cat," he says quietly. "The what?" "Sit down, Catherine. This is an old story." He makes us both tea before he speaks again. Long ago, a Cherokee woman became curious about the men's sacred ceremonies. They were forbidden to women, but she wanted to know the secrets. So she wrapped herself in a mountain lion's skin and crept close to watch. I sip my tea, listening. The medicine men discovered her. They were furious she had broken sacred law, so they cursed her. The mountain lion skin fused to her body. She became something neither woman nor cat. Six-legged. Forever hungry. Forever watching. That's just a legend, I say, but my voice sounds uncertain even to me. Thomas looks at me with eyes that have seen too much. "Is it? You found the tracks. Your daughter sees her watching your house. The Wampus cat protects the sacred places in these mountains. And right now, those places are threatened." "Threatened how?" "A development company wants to build a resort right on top of an old ceremony ground. Right where the medicine wheel still stands, hidden in the forest." I think about the impossible tracks. The way other animals have gone silent in parts of the forest where they used to be everywhere. The feeling I get sometimes that something intelligent is watching me. "Even if this is real," I say slowly, "what does it want with me?" Thomas pours more tea. "Your grandmother was from the same clan as the original cursed woman. So are you. Maybe the Wampus cat recognizes family. Maybe she's trying to tell you something." When I drive home, Emma is already asleep. I check on her, then stand at the window looking toward Devil's Backbone. The moon is rising, full and heavy. Something moves in the tree line. For just a moment, I see it clearly. A massive shape, too large for any normal mountain lion. It stands on 4 legs, but 2 more limbs hang at its sides. And its face, the face is human, female, beautiful and terrible. It watches me, then it's gone. I don't sleep that night. The next morning, I'm in the ranger station when Dan Martinez walks in. He's the park biologist, my closest friend here, and the only person who might believe what I'm about to tell him. "I need you to look at something," I say, spreading the photographs across the table. Dan studies them carefully. He's quiet for a long prost. Time. "These tracks are impossible," he finally says. "I know. Mountain lion and human, mixed together. Same stride, same animal. I know." He looks up at me. "Catherine, I've been finding dead deer, killed in ways that don't match any predator I've studied. The bite marks are all wrong. Some are clearly from a big cat. Others look almost human." "Show me," I say. We find the deer carcass a mile into the forest. It's fresh, maybe killed last night. The sight makes my veterinary training kick in automatically. I start cataloging injuries. Claw marks across the shoulders, definitely feline. But the throat wound is wrong. The teeth marks are too wide, too varied. And there are smaller punctures that look like human canines. "What could do this?" Dan asks. Before I can answer, we hear it. A sound that turns my blood to ice. It starts as a mountain lion's scream, that horrible shrieking wail that sounds like a woman being murdered. But then it shifts, becomes actual words in Cherokee. I only know a little of the language, but I recognize one word clearly. *Etsy. *daughter. "Did you hear that?" I whisper. Dan's face has gone white. That sounded like it was calling for its daughter. The sound comes again, closer now. Moving through the trees with a grace that no animal that size should have. "We need to go," I say. "Now." We walk quickly back toward the trail, not quite running but close. I can feel something pacing us through the trees, staying just out of sight. Every time I glance sideways, I catch movement. Something large and low. Something wrong. We're almost back to the ranger station when we hear the screaming, real screaming this time. Human. Coming from the overlooked trail. Dan and I run. The scene we find will haunt me forever. A family, parents, and 2 small children are huddled on the trail. The father stands in front of them, holding a hiking stick like a weapon. Blood runs down his arm. 20 feet away, she waits. The Wampus cat. She's massive, easily 7 feet long. Her body is a mountain lion's, golden and muscular. But she has 6 legs, 4 normal ones, and 2 that hang at her sides, ending in almost human hands with long claws. Her tail lashes back and forth. Her face makes me want to scream. It's a woman's face. Beautiful, with high cheekbones and dark eyes, but her mouth opens too wide, showing fangs that belong to a big cat. When she sees me, she speaks. The words are Cherokee. I don't understand them all, but I hear asterisk sister, sacred ground, protect. Asterisk, get behind me, I tell the family, pulling my radio. All of you, back toward the station. Slowly. The father doesn't move. That thing attacked us. It went for my kids. No, I say, watching the Wampus cat carefully. It went for you. It's protecting something. The creature's eyes meet mine. There's intelligence there. Understanding, and something that might be sadness. Dan helps the family retreat down the trail. I stay between them and the Wampus cat, moving backwards slowly. She doesn't follow, just watches until we're out of sight. The father needs 12 stitches in his arm. The claw wounds are deep but clean. If the Wampus cat wanted to kill him, he'd be dead. She was warning him, not hunting him, but warning him of what? That night, I can't stop thinking about the look in her eyes. The intelligence. The way she spoke to me. At midnight, I wake to find Emma standing at my bedroom door. She's outside again, Mom. She wants to talk to you. Emma, get back in bed. She won't hurt us. She promised. My daughter's voice is too calm, too certain. Like she's been having conversations I know nothing about. I grab my flashlight and step onto the back porch. The Wampus cat sits in our yard. But as I watch, she changes. The transformation is fluid, almost beautiful. Her body ripples and shifts. The 6 legs become 4 limbs. The fur recedes. The feline features soften. In less than a minute, a woman stands where the creature Saturday. She's naked, covered in scars, with long dark hair. She could be my sister. Catherine Moonwhisper, she says in perfect English. Granddaughter of running water, daughter of the same clan as the first cursed woman. I have waited for you. My hand tightens on the flashlight. What are you? A guardian, a prisoner, a warning. She steps closer. Your people built sacred places in these mountains. Medicine wheels, ceremony grounds, burial sites. When they left, someone had to stay and protect them. That someone became me. The curse, I whisper. Yes, but also a purpose. Her dark eyes burn with intensity. Now the sacred places are threatened. Men with machines want to destroy what must not be destroyed. I cannot stop them all. I need help. Why me? Because you understand both sides, the human and the animal, the modern world and the old ways. Because your blood carries the same curse that made me. Because your daughter will inherit this burden if you do not take it. I think of Emma, seeing the Wampus cat watching our house, talking to her, learning from her. What do you want me to do? I ask. The woman creature smiles, and it's a sad, ancient expression. First, you must understand what we protect. Tomorrow night, come to the old ceremony ground. Come alone. I will show you why the curse exists, why it must continue. She transforms again, becoming the 6-legged hunter. In the moonlight, she's both beautiful and terrible. Then she's gone, vanishing into the forest like smoke. Inside, Emma stands at the window. You talk to her, my daughter says. I knew you would. Emma, how long have you been seeing her? Since grandmother died. She says I have the gift. She says one day I'll have to choose, just like you do. I hold my daughter close, feeling the weight of old magic and older curses settling around us like a net. Whatever choice comes, it will change everything. The next day, I do research I should have done weeks ago. In the ranger station's old files, I find incident reports going back 50 years. Missing livestock. Hikers who reported being stalked. Unexplained deaths. Every single one clusters around 3 locations in the forest areas I now realize are all Cherokee sacred sites. Dan finds me surrounded by papers. You look like you haven't slept, he says. I haven't. Dan, look at this pattern. Every mysterious animal attack in this forest happens near one of these 3 spots. He studies the map I've marked. That's not random. No, it's protective. I tell him everything. The wampus cat, the woman, the sacred sites. He listens without interrupting, and when I finish, he's quiet for a long moment. A year ago, I would have said you were crazy, Dan finally says. But I saw that thing. I heard it speak. And Catherine, I analyzed those hair samples you collected. The DNA test came back this morning. He hands me the lab report. It's impossible, he continues. The sample contains both mountain lion and human DNA. Not mixed fused, like they're from the same organism. We stare at each other. There's more, Dan says. A development company called Ridgeview Resorts just got permits to start surveying for a new luxury resort. Guess where they want to build? He points to one of my marked locations on the map. Right on top of the main ceremony ground. There's an old medicine wheel there, buried under 50 years of forest growth. They'll bulldoze right through it. When do they start? Survey team goes in tomorrow. That night, I hike to the old ceremony ground. The trail is barely visible, overgrown and forgotten. Thomas gave me directions, but I'm not sure I'd find it without the feeling pulling me forward. Like something wants me there. The ceremony. The ground sits in a clearing surrounded by ancient oaks. In the center, partially hidden by moss and leaves, I can see the stone circle of the medicine wheel. It's beautiful and sad, this sacred place that everyone forgot. The wampus cat waits for me in her human form. You came alone, she says. Good. The survey team comes tomorrow. They'll tear all this up. I know. I've killed 3 of their scouts already. My breath catches. You've killed people? They disturbed the medicine wheel. They dug where the bones of my ancestors sleep. I gave them warnings. They ignored them. Her eyes are hard. I do what I must to protect this ground. That is my curse and my duty. There has to be another way. There is. She moves closer, and I see the exhaustion in her face. 300 years I have guarded these places. 300 years of hunting, killing, protecting. I am so tired, Catherine. The curse needs a new guardian. No, I say, backing away. I have a daughter, a life. And I had a daughter too. I had a life. But the sacred places needed protecting, and I was there, and curious, and foolish. Now you are here. She transforms, becoming the 6-legged nightmare. Watch. See what we protect. She places one hand-like paw on the medicine wheel. The world changes. Suddenly, I'm seeing through her eyes, but not now, 300 years ago. I see Cherokee families gathering here for ceremony. I see healing rituals. I see children playing while elders pray. I see this place filled with life and purpose and sacred power. Then I see white settlers coming. Violence, removal, death. The Cherokee driven away. But this place still holding their power, their prayers, their dead. And I see the wampus cat then just a curious woman watching the men's ceremony, wrapped in a mountain lion skin. I feel her transformation as the curse takes hold. The agony as her body changes. The isolation as she realizes what she's become. But I also feel her purpose crystallize. Someone must guard these places. Someone must remember. The vision ends. I'm gasping, tears running down my face. Now you understand, the wampus cat says, human again. This ground is soaked in prayers and blood. If it's destroyed, something breaks in the world. The balance tips. Darkness comes. Why does it have to be me? Because you carry the blood. Because your daughter watches, learning, waiting. Because if you don't choose, she will. The woman's face softens with something like pity. Or because the developers win, and all of this ends. Those are your choices. She vanishes into the shadows. I sit in the ceremony ground until dawn, feeling the weight of 300 years pressing down on me. The survey team arrives at 8 a.m. I'm waiting for them. This area is closed for wildlife management, I tell their leader. A man in an expensive jacket who looks annoyed to see me. We have permits, he says, waving papers. We're starting work today, whether you like it or not. There are endangered species here. Federal protection. Lady, I don't care about your endangered species. We've got lawyers who already cleared all this. Move aside. His crew starts unloading equipment. Ground-penetrating radar. Survey stakes. A small bulldozer. I grab my radio to call for backup, but before I can speak, the screaming starts. The wampus cat explodes from the tree line. She's in full monster form now, all 6 legs and fury. She hits the first surveyor like a truck, sending him flying. The bulldozer operator tries to run, but she's on him in seconds. Blood sprays. Get back! I'm screaming, trying to reach the fallen men, but the Wampus cat is between me and them. Her mouth is red, her eyes are wild with rage. The crew leader pulls a gun. No! I shout, but he fires. The bullet hits the Wampus cat in the shoulder. She roars a sound that's equal parts human scream and mountain lion shriek. Then she charges him. I don't remember moving. I just know I'm suddenly between them, my arms spread. Stop! I yell. Both of you, stop! The Wampus cat's claws are inches from my face. She's panting, bleeding, furious. Behind me, I hear the crew leader's gun cocking again. Please, I say quietly, looking into her two human eyes. There has to be another way. For a long moment, we all freeze. Then the Wampus cat speaks, in Cherokee, words I somehow understand. Then find it quickly, sister. Before more die. She vanishes. Behind me, the crew leader is calling the police. On the ground, 2 men are badly injured but alive. I start first aid while my mind races. The curse demands a guardian. The sacred ground demands protection. The developers have permits and lawyers and money. And I have a choice to make. The police arrest me. They say I endangered the survey team by not warning them about the dangerous animal. They say I'm interfering with legal development. They say a lot of things that don't matter because I'm sitting in a cell while bulldozers prepare to destroy the ceremony ground. Dan posts my bail after 6 hours. We drive straight to Thomas Whitefeather's cabin. The Wampus cat told me I have to choose, I say, that I can become the new guardian. That's insane, right? Thomas pours tea like we have all the time in the world. Your grandmother told me you would come to this moment. She hoped you wouldn't. She hoped the old ways would fade and free our family from this burden. But the sacred places don't care about hope. I can't just become a monster. I have Emma. I have a life. The curse transforms willing guardians differently than it did the first woman. Thomas interrupts. She was punished. You would be choosing. The transformation would be yours to control. You could live as human, shift to protect, return to your life. But the burden would never leave you. And, if I refuse, the Wampus cat continues her war. More people die. Eventually she fails. She is only one, growing weaker. The sacred ground is destroyed. And in 20 years, maybe 30, your daughter stands where you stand now, making the same choice with less power to effect change. I think of Emma's face at the window. Emma talking to the Wampus cat like they're old friends. Emma saying, one day I'll have to choose. How do I do it? I ask. Thomas hands me a bundle of herbs. Go to the medicine wheel tonight. The Wampus cat will meet you. The ritual is simple. You take up the burden willingly. But Catherine, understand this. 300 years she has served. She is ready to rest. If you take the curse, she is freed. There's no going back. The full moon rises as I hike to the ceremony ground. I'm carrying the herbs, a knife, and a letter I wrote for Emma if this goes wrong. The Wampus cat waits in her human form. In the moonlight, I can see the family resemblance. We could be sisters, separated by 3 centuries. You came, she says. I came. Tell me how this works. We perform the ceremony together. You agree to take the burden. The curse transfers. I become human again, mortal, free. You become the guardian. And I can control it? The transformation? Yes. You won't be trapped in monster form like I was. You'll keep your mind, your choices. But the instinct to protect will be absolute. You will kill to defend the sacred places. I think about the surveyor, she mauled. The blood. The violence. I'm not sure I can do that. You're a mother. Tell me you wouldn't kill to protect Emma. She's right. I would. I have that capacity. Everyone does, pushed far enough. The developers come at dawn, the Wampus cat continues. They have police escorts now, guns. They will tear up the medicine wheel, and you won't be able to stop them with human law. But as the guardian, she touches my face gently. You could terrify them, haunt them, make this place so dangerous they abandon it. You wouldn't have to kill, just protect. And you? What happens to you? I become human, mortal. After 300 years, I finally get to die. The longing in her voice breaks my heart. Please, sister. I'm so tired. I look at the medicine wheel, at the sacred ground my ancestors prayed on. I think of Emma growing up, maybe standing here in 20 years making this same choice. Teach me the words, I say. The ceremony is simpler than I expected. We sit at the medicine wheel's center. We share the herbs, they taste like smoke and earth. We cut our palms and mix our blood on the stones. Then she speaks in Cherokee, and I repeat the words after her. I don't know what they all mean, but I feel the meaning in my bones. Asterisk, I take this burden willingly. I become the guardian. I protect the sacred ground until another takes my place. Asterisk. The world tilts. Pain explodes through my body. I'm screaming, falling, my bones breaking and reshaping. I feel my spine extending, new limbs bursting from my sides, fur erupting from my skin, my face elongating, teeth sharpening. The agony lasts forever and no time at all. When it ends, I'm standing on 6 legs. I'm the Wampus cat. I can feel everything, the forest breathing, the small creatures hiding, the earth pulsing with old power beneath my feet. My senses are overwhelming. I can smell fear and blood and sacred smoke from centuries ago. And I can feel the 3 sacred sites calling me. My territory, my responsibility. Across the medicine wheel, a woman lies gasping. Just a woman now, the curse gone, leaving her mortal and free. She looks up at me with tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispers. Thank you. I want to respond, but my mouth won't form human words. Not yet. I'm too new to this, too raw. The woman stands slowly, like she's forgotten how to walk on just 2 legs. They come at dawn, she says. The developers. Show them what guards this place now. But remember, you chose this. You can control it. Don't let the rage control you. Then she walks into the forest, just another human, leaving the sacred ground. Free for the first time in 300 years. I stand alone in the ceremony ground, in my new body, feeling the weight of 300 years settling onto my shoulders. Dawn comes too fast. I hear them before I see them, trucks and heavy equipment. At least 20 men. They've brought police escorts, men with rifles. They're prepared for a dangerous animal. They're not prepared for what I am. I move through the trees like smoke. My 6 legs give me balance and speed no normal animal could match. I circle their convoy, staying just out of sight, letting them feel watched. The first surveyor who steps toward the medicine wheel, I drop in front of. He screams. His rifle falls. I don't touch him, just look at him with my 2 human eyes, letting him see the intelligence. Letting him understand this isn't just an animal. He runs. The others try to hold their ground. The police fire shots that miss. I'm too fast, moving in ways their training never prepared them for. I'm above them in the trees, then behind them, then circling so close they feel my breath. I don't hurt anyone. I don't need to. I just let them see what guards this ground now. Let them understand that no money, no permits, no weapons will make this place safe to violate. Within an hour, they retreat. The project foreman calls his supervisors. I hear him saying words like liability and dangerous and not worth it. By noon, Ridgeview Resorts announces they're choosing a different location for their resort. The ceremony ground is safe. I should feel triumph. Instead, I feel the weight of forever. As the sun sets, I practice the transformation. It's hard, painful, requiring focus I barely have. But slowly, I shift back to human form. I'm naked, covered in scratches, disoriented. But I'm me. Catherine Moonwhisper, ranger, mother, guardian. I stumble home as the last light fades. Emma is waiting on the porch. You did it, she says quietly. I felt it happen. I'm sorry, I whisper, pulling her close. I'm so sorry, this is our family's burden. Don't be sorry, Mom. Emma pulls back to look at me. You saved the sacred places. You're a hero. I'm a monster. You're both. My 10-year-old daughter smiles with wisdom beyond her years, just like our family has always been. 6 months later, and I'm still learning what I am. I work my ranger shifts as always. I help hikers, track normal animals, give tours. No one suspects. The official story is that the rogue mountain lion was never caught but seems to have moved to a different territory. Only Dan knows the truth. And Thomas, and Emma. At night, sometimes I patrol. I shift into my guardian form and run the boundaries of the 3 sacred sites. There are no more incidents, no more threats. The developers gave up completely after 2 of their surveyors quit, claiming the area was haunted. They're not wrong. The woman who was the Wampus cat before me died peacefully 3 months ago. I found her obituary. Her name had been Martha Kingfisher. She'd spent her last months reuniting with distant relatives, seeing the ocean for the first time, eating ice cream, dying as a human, on her own terms. I hope when my time comes, I earn the same peace. Emma is learning Cherokee from Thomas. She says she wants to understand the ceremony, just in case. I tell her it won't be her burden. I'll guard the sacred places until I'm old, until I've found another willing soul to take my place. But we both know the truth. This runs in our blood. Our family has always been the guardians, whether we wanted it or not. Tonight, I stand on Devil's Backbone Ridge in my guardian form. 6 legs, mountain lion, body, 2 human face. The moon is full, and the forest is alive with sounds I couldn't hear as a regular human. I feel the sacred places calling to me, constant and patient. Below, I can see my house. Emma's light is on, she's reading. Safe, protected. This is the curse. This is the blessing. This is the choice I made. And some nights, when the wind carries old prayers from the medicine wheel, when I feel my ancestors' gratitude like warmth in my bones, when I know the sacred ground will stand for another generation some nights, I think I made the right choice. The Wampus cat prowls Devil's Backbone still. She always will. But now she chooses it, and that makes all the difference. My name is Samuel Ironbark, and I've been a ranger in Daniel Boone National Forest for 18 years. Before that, I was a Marine. Before that, I was just a Kentucky boy who loved these woods more than anything in the world. I'm telling you this because what happened to me in the fall of 1973 shouldn't have happened to someone like me. I'm a by-the-book kind of man. I believe in rules, regulations, and things that make sense. I never believed in Bigfoot or any of that cryptid nonsense the tourists love to talk about around their campfires. I should have. It was October when everything started. The leaves were turning orange and red, and the air had that perfect crisp feeling that makes you glad to be alive. My wife Martha taught at the elementary school in town, and my 2 boys were teenagers who thought their old man was boring. Maybe I was. But boring kept me alive out there in those woods. I worked the Red River Gorge area, remote cliff country, where the tourists didn't go much. My job was mostly checking on illegal hunters and making sure nobody was digging up ginseng without permits. Simple work. Safe work. That Tuesday morning started normal. I had my coffee, kissed Martha goodbye, and drove my truck up into the gorge. The radio crackled with the usual stuff, weather reports, another ranger calling in about a broken trail marker. Nothing special. Then around noon, I got a call that changed everything. "Sam, we got a weird one," dispatch said. Her name was Carol, and she'd been doing this job longer than me. Nothing rattled her. But her voice sounded strange. "Got a couple of ginseng hunters up near Wildman Hollow. They're saying something attacked their camp last night." "Bear?" I asked. "We got bear problems sometimes." "They're saying it wasn't a bear, Sam. They're saying it was 12 feet tall." I almost laughed. Almost. But Carol wasn't the type to call me about crazy talk unless there was something to it. "I'll check. No doubt," I said. The drive up to Wildman Hollow took 40 minutes on roads that barely deserved the name. The locals didn't like that area much. Old-timers had stories about it, stories about things that walked on 2 legs but weren't men, stories about sounds in the night that made dogs hide under porches. I thought they were just stories. When I got to the camp, I knew something was very wrong. The tent was ripped to pieces, not cut ripped, like something had grabbed it with huge hands and just torn it apart. Their equipment was scattered everywhere. A cooler was 50 yards away, crushed flat. Their truck had claw marks on the hood, deep ones, like someone had dragged knives through the metal. The 2 hunters were sitting on a log, looking pale. One of them was shaking, even though it wasn't cold. "Mr. Ranger," the older one said. His name was Pete, and I'd caught him poaching deer once before. "I know what you're thinking, but this wasn't no bear." "Tell me what you saw," I said, getting out my notebook. "It was dark," Pete said. Maybe 2 in the morning. We heard something walking around the camp. Heavy steps. Real heavy. I thought maybe it was an elk or something, so I turned on my flashlight. He stopped talking. His hands were shaking. "And?" I prompted. "It was standing right there," he whispered. Right at the edge of the light. Had to be 12 feet tall, covered in dark hair. Its eyes. He swallowed hard. Its eyes glowed like a cat's eyes, but orange, bright orange. And it was looking right at me. "What did it do?" I asked, still writing. "It screamed," the younger hunter said. His name was Danny, Pete's nephew. Not like any animal I ever heard. Made my ears hurt, made my chest hurt. Then it grabbed our tent and ripped it apart like paper. We ran to the truck and stayed there till morning. I looked at the destroyed camp again. Something had done this, that was for sure. But 12 feet tall? Glowing eyes? That was crazy talk. "I'll file a report," I said. "Probably a bear. Big one maybe. You boys pack up what's left and get out of here. And next time, get a permit before you go digging ginseng." They didn't argue. They packed up fast and drove away like something was chasing them. I started looking around the camp more carefully. That's when I found the footprint. It was in a patch of soft dirt near the creek. At first, I thought it was fake, had to be fake. But it was pressed deep into the ground, at least 8 inches down. It was huge, 24 inches long, maybe more, shaped like a human foot, but much, much bigger. I knelt down and looked at it close. The edges were crisp. Fresh, this was made last night. I stood up and looked around the hollow. The trees seemed darker suddenly, quieter. I'd been in these woods my whole life, but right then I felt like something was watching me. I felt like I didn't belong there. I took pictures of the footprint and measurements. I collected some hair samples I found on a broken tree branch. Thick, dark hair that didn't look like bear fur. Then I got in my truck and drove back to the station. All the way down the mountain, I kept checking my rearview mirror. Back at the office, I filed my report, called it a bear attack. That's what made sense. That's what fit the regulations. But I didn't mention the footprint size in my official paperwork. I didn't want people thinking I'd lost my mind. That night at dinner, Martha asked me about my day. "Same old stuff," I said. "Couple of idiots got scared by a bear." My son Jake looked up from his mashed potatoes. He was 16, smart as a whip. "Dad, can me and Tom go camping in the gorge next weekend for our biology project?" "Where in the gorge?" I asked. "Near Wildman Hollow. Mr. Peterson said there's good plant diversity up there." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "No." "But Dad," I said, "no. That area's off limits right now." Martha gave me a look. I never said no without a reason, but I couldn't explain it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. 3 days later, it happened again. 2 more poachers went into the hollow. They were after deer, hunting out of season with spotlights. Dispatch called me at 6 in the morning. "Sam, you need to get up there. Now." "What happened?" "Their wives called it in. They didn't come home last night. Their truck is still up there, but..." She paused. "Sam, the truck is crushed, like something stepped on it." I drove up there with state police backup, Officers Miller and Rodriguez, good men. They'd seen plenty of strange stuff in the mountains. When we found the truck, Rodriguez actually said a prayer in Spanish. The truck looked like a giant had picked it up and squeezed it. The roof was caved in. The doors were bent. All the windows were shattered. But the weird part, the part that made my skin crawl, was that the truck was sitting on 4 flat tires, pressed down into the dirt like something had crushed it from above. "What kind of bear does this?" Miller asked quietly. "No bear," I said. "No bear I ever heard of." We found the 2 men an hour later. They were alive, but they weren't okay. They were hiding in a cave about half a mile away, curled up like children. When we tried to talk to them, they just kept saying the same thing over and over. The giant in the trees, it followed us, it followed us. They weren't making sense. We called for an ambulance. The EMTs said they were in shock. While we waited, I looked around the area. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The trees. About 20 trees had been snapped, not at the base, but 20 feet up, just broken in half like toothpicks. The broken parts were hanging down, all pointing toward the crushed truck. Like arrows. Like a warning. No bear breaks trees 20 feet up. Rodriguez saw what I was looking at. Sam, what the hell did this? I didn't answer. I was looking at something else. Footprints, dozens of them, all around the area, all huge, all pressed deep into the ground that was mostly rock. We need to get out of here, Miller said suddenly. His hand was on his gun. Right now. We didn't argue. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those trees, about the footprints, about the way those two men had looked, the pure terror in their eyes. Martha found me at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, reading everything I could find about the area's history. Sam, you're scaring me, she said softly. I'm scaring myself, I admitted. The old books talked about something called the timber giants, Cherokee stories, going back hundreds of years. They said there were creatures in the deepest parts of the forest, guardians of sacred places. They walked on 2 legs like men, but they were bigger than any man, stronger than any animal, and they protected certain areas where the Cherokee had buried their dead. Wildman Hollow was one of those places. You don't believe in that stuff, Martha said. You've always said it was just stories. I know what I've always said. I looked at her. But something's up there, Martha, something real, and it's killing people. The next morning, I sent the hair samples to a lab in Lexington, called in a favor from a buddy who worked there. 3 days later, he called me back. Sam, where'd you get this hair? Can you tell me what it is? I asked. It's primate. That's all I can tell you. It's not bear, not human, not any ape I've ever seen. The DNA is wrong. It doesn't match anything in our database. I thanked him and hung up. That's when I knew. Really knew. There was something in those woods that shouldn't exist. Something that had been there for a very long time. And I was going to have to deal with it. I started patrolling Wildman Hollow every day. I told myself I was looking for evidence, trying to understand what we were dealing with. But really, I was trying to protect people. Word had gotten out about the attacks. Some folks were scared. Others were curious. A few idiots with cameras were talking about going up there to look for Bigfoot. I put up signs, area closed, dangerous wildlife. It didn't matter. People don't listen to signs. On my 3rd day of patrols, I found something that made my hands shake. Trees. Dozens of them. Uprooted, not cut, not knocked over, but pulled straight out of the ground. They were arranged in a circle around a rocky outcrop. The roots were all pointing inward, like fingers pointing at something. I walked into the circle. In the center was a flat stone, and on that stone was a deer skull. Fresh, still had bits of meat on it, but the skull had been cracked open and the brain was gone. This wasn't random. This was a message, a warning. You need to leave, a voice said behind me. I spun around, hand going to my pistol. An old man stood at the edge of the circle. Cherokee, had to be 80 years old. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, but he had a necklace of carved bone around his neck. Who are you? I asked. Name's William Crow. My grandfather's grandfather is buried near here, in the sacred ground. He looked at the circle of trees. The old one is angry. It knows men are planning to cut the forest. What old one? I asked, even though I was starting to understand. The Guardian. Last of its kind. Been here for 10 generations, maybe more. Usually it just watches, protects the burial grounds. But when men come with machines, when they plan to dig and destroy, he shook his head. It kills. There's a construction project? This was news to me. Coming next month. State approved a road through here. Logging companies want access to the old timber. They don't know what they're digging into. Or maybe they don't care. I thought about that deer skull, about the trees arranged in a warning pattern. How do I stop it? The Guardian? William Crow laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You don't stop it. You can't. It's stronger than 10 men, faster than anything that size should be, and it's smarter than you or me. You don't fight it. He looked at me with dark, serious eyes. You respect it. You leave it alone. Or you help it. Help it how? Stop the machines from coming. Stop the destruction. That's the only way. He turned and walked away into the trees. I tried to follow, but he was gone. Just vanished. Like he'd never been there at all. That night, I made some calls. Found out William Crow was right. There was a construction project approved, a logging road right through Wildman Hollow. The company was Appalachian Timber Resources. The foreman's name was Dale Hackett. I knew Dale. He'd been in my high school, 3 years ahead of me. He was tough, mean, and didn't care about much except making money. I called the number for Appalachian Timber. "This is Ranger Ironbark with the Forest Service. I need to talk to Dale Hackett about the Wildman Hollow project." "Mr. Hackett is busy." "What's this about?" "It's about dangerous wildlife in the construction area. There have been several attacks. I'm recommending the project be delayed until—" "We're not delaying anything, Ranger. We have permits. We have schedules. We'll be starting work Monday morning." "You don't understand. Something up there is killing people." She hung up on me. 3 days later, on Friday night, I got a call at home. It was Pete, the ginseng hunter from the first incident. "Mr. Ironbark, you need to know something." He sounded scared. "My nephew Danny went back up there. He said he wanted to get pictures, maybe sell them to a newspaper. I told him not to, but he didn't listen. He went up yesterday morning, and he hasn't come back." My stomach dropped. "You call the police?" "I'm calling you. Please, go find him." I grabbed my gear and drove up to the hollow. It was dark by the time I got there, and I didn't want to go into those woods at night, but a kid was missing. Stupid kid, but still. I found Danny's truck parked at the old trailhead. His camera bag was in the front seat. I grabbed my flashlight and my rifle and started walking. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just silence. I found Danny half a mile in. I won't describe it in detail. It's something I see in my nightmares. But he was hanging from a tree impaled on a broken branch 20 feet off the ground. He'd been dead for hours. Maybe since yesterday. The thing that did it was strong enough to throw a grown man 20 feet into the air, and accurate enough to impale him on a specific branch. I radioed for help. While I waited, I saw the footprints around the tree. Fresh ones, big ones. And I realized something that made my blood turn to ice. The creature had stayed here, guarding the body, waiting. It was still here. I heard a sound behind me, a low rumble, like rocks grinding together. I turned, bringing my rifle up. 2 eyes stared at me from the darkness. Orange eyes, glowing. They were 8 feet off the ground. "Jesus," I whispered. The eyes moved. Closer. I could see the shape, now massive, covered in dark hair, shoulders wider than a door. It was walking on 2 legs. Walking toward me. I aimed my rifle at those eyes. "Stop," I said. My voice shook. "I will shoot." The creature stopped. We stared at each other. I could hear it breathing deep, slow breaths. Then it did something I'll never forget. It turned and walked away. Just turned around and vanished into the trees like smoke. It could have killed me, easily. But it didn't. Why? The state police came. They took Danny's body down. They asked me questions. I told them what I did. To saw most of it anyway. I didn't mention the glowing eyes. The county sheriff wanted to send in a hunting party. Whatever this animal is, we need to kill it before it kills anyone else. "It's not an animal," I said. "Not exactly." "Then what is it?" I didn't have an answer. They closed Wildman Hollow to all traffic. Put up barriers on the roads. But Monday was coming, and the construction crew was coming with it. Dale Hackett had called the governor's office. The project wasn't stopping. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about William Crow's words. Asterisk. You help it. Asterisk. At midnight, I got dressed and drove up to the hollow. I parked my truck and walked into the woods. I didn't bring my rifle, just my flashlight. I walked to the stone circle where I'd seen William Crow. The deer skull was still there. "I know you're out there," I called into the darkness. "I know you can hear me. I want to talk." Nothing happened. The woods stayed silent. "They're coming tomorrow, men with machines. They're going to tear this place apart. I know you're trying to protect something. I want to help, but I need to understand." The temperature dropped. I could see my breath. Then I heard it, that low rumble, like rocks grinding. The creature stepped out of the trees. I'd seen it once before. But seeing it now, up close, it was beyond anything I'd imagined. It had to be 12 feet tall, maybe more. Covered in dark brown hair. Its face was like a human's and a gorilla's mixed together, flat nose, heavy brow, but intelligent eyes. Those orange eyes. It looked at me, right into me, and suddenly my head filled with pictures. Memories that weren't mine. I saw the forest as it was hundreds of years ago. I saw Cherokee people living here. I saw them building burial mounds on sacred ground. I saw them making a deal with something, a creature that lived in the deepest parts of the forest. The creature would protect the graves. In return, the people would leave the creature alone. They would not hunt it, not harm it, not speak of it to outsiders. The visions changed. I saw the Cherokee forced to leave. I saw the trail of tears. I saw settlers coming. I saw the creature watching, always watching, alone, the last of its kind, bound by an ancient promise to protect the graves, even though the people who made that promise were long gone. Then I saw the future. Machines tearing up the earth. The burial mounds destroyed, ancient bones scattered and crushed. The creature standing in the ruins, screaming. The visions ended. I was on my knees in the dirt, gasping. The creature was still watching me. "I understand," I whispered. "I'll help you. I promise." It nodded. Actually nodded. Then it turned and disappeared into the trees. I drove straight to my house and started making calls. Called the Cherokee Nation offices in Oklahoma. Called the State Historic Preservation Office. Called every person I could think of who might care about ancient burial grounds. By dawn, I had a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It was probably illegal. But it was all I had. Monday morning, I drove up to Wildman Hollow before the construction crew arrived. I brought William Crow with me. I'd found him in town, and he agreed to help. We marked off the area where the burial mounds were. William Crow performed a traditional ceremony while I took pictures and measurements. When the construction crew showed up at 8 a.m., I was waiting for them. Dale Hackett climbed out of his truck, looking annoyed. "Ranger Ironbark, we got permits. You can't stop us." "This is a protected archaeological site," I said. "Cherokee burial grounds. Under federal law, you can't disturb them." "Bull. We surveyed this area. There's nothing here. You want to bet your company on that? Because I've got evidence. I've got witnesses. And I've got the Cherokee Nation filing an emergency injunction this morning. If you start digging and we find bones, you're done. Your company is finished." Dale's face turned red. "You can't. I can, and I am. Take your crew and leave. Now." For a long moment, I thought he was going to punch me. Then he turned to his crew. "Get some equipment. We're clearing this site today. I don't care what this ranger says." "Dale, don't," but he wasn't listening. He climbed into a bulldozer and started the engine. That's when the creature attacked. It came out of the trees like a freight train. It grabbed the bulldozer, grabbed it, and flipped it over. Just picked up a 10-ton machine and threw it on its side. Dale scrambled out, screaming. The construction workers ran for their trucks. But the creature was faster. It caught one of the trucks and lifted it, shaking it until the men inside fell out. Then it threw the truck into a tree. The tree cracked and fell. "Get out of here!" I yelled at the workers. "Run!" Most of them ran. But Dale didn't. He pulled out a pistol and started shooting at the creature. The bullets hit it. I saw the creature flinch. But it didn't stop. It charged at Dale, roaring that same sound I'd heard before, the one that made your chest hurt. I ran at Dale and tackled him. The creature's hand swept over us, missing by inches. I felt the wind from its arm. "It'll kill you," I shouted at Dale. "Leave, now!" Dale looked up at the creature, looked into those orange eyes, and something in him broke. He scrambled to his feet and ran, leaving his gun behind. The creature watched him go. Then it turned to me. We stared at each other. I could hear sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police. "Go," I said quietly. "I'll handle this. I'll keep them away. Just go." The creature nodded once. Then it vanished into the forest. By the time the police arrived, the construction crew was gone. Dale Hackett told everyone a bear had attacked the site, a huge bear, the biggest he'd ever seen. I didn't correct him. It took 3 months, but I got the burial grounds protected. The Cherokee Nation sent archaeologists. They found the mounds. They found bones, ancient bones, some of them over 1,000 years old. The construction project was canceled. The logging company sued, but they lost. Wildman Hollow was designated a historic preservation site. No development allowed. Dale Hackett moved to Tennessee, took a job with a different company. I heard he started drinking heavy after what happened. He never talked about what he really saw that day. I stayed on as a ranger, but my job changed. I became the unofficial guardian of the sacred sites throughout the Daniel Boone National Forest. There are more of them than people realize. Places where the old agreements still hold. Places where things live that shouldn't exist according to modern science. I see the creature sometimes. Never up close, just glimpses. A shadow moving through the trees, footprints in the snow. Sometimes I find deer carcasses arranged in patterns, thank you gifts, I think. I never told Martha the whole truth. I told her about stopping the construction project, about saving the burial grounds. But I didn't tell her about the visions, about the ancient promise, about what I'd become. A few years after it happened, I met other rangers, quiet men and women who worked in remote areas, who had stories they didn't tell in official reports. We didn't talk about it directly, but we recognized each other. The ones who knew. There's a network of us now. We watch over the sacred places. We keep people away from areas they shouldn't go. We protect the things that live in the deep woods, not just in Kentucky, but in forests all across the Appalachian Mountains. My sons are grown now. Jake became a forest ranger too. Works up in West Virginia. We don't talk about Wildman Hollow, but sometimes I see him looking at the deep woods the same way I do, like he's waiting for something, like he knows. I'm 63 years old now. I'll be retiring in a few years. Someone else will take over watching the sacred sites. The burden will pass on. That's how it's always worked. Last week, I was doing a patrol near Wildman Hollow. First time I'd been up there in months. I parked my truck and walked up to the stone circle. The deer skull is gone now, rotted away years ago. But the trees are still there, still arranged in their protective circle. I stood in the center and waited. The sun was setting. The woods were getting dark. Then I heard it. That low rumble. Like rocks grinding together. I turned and saw two orange eyes watching me from the shadows. We looked at each other, the creature and me. Guardian and guardian. I kept my promise, I said quietly. The burial grounds are safe. Your ancestors can rest. The creature nodded slowly. Then, it did something it had never done before. It stepped forward into the fading light so I could see it clearly. It was older now, gray in its dark fur, moving a little slower, but still strong, still watching, still protecting. It raised one massive hand, not threatening, more like a salute, a recognition between soldiers who'd fought the same war. I raised my hand back. Then it turned and walked away into the deepening shadows. I watched until I couldn't see it anymore. I stood there for a long time after, watching the darkness. Thinking about ancient promises and modern lies, about things that live in the deep woods, about secrets worth keeping. The tourists still come to Daniel Boone National Forest. They hike the trails. They take their pictures. They camp under the stars. And they're safe as long as they stay where they belong. As long as they don't go looking for things they shouldn't find. But sometimes, late at night, hikers will report strange sounds echoing through the hollows. Sounds like nothing they've ever heard before. Sounds that make them pack up their tents and leave, even though they can't explain why. The old-timers know those sounds. They don't talk about them much. But they know. And now, you know too. My name is Samuel Ironbark. I was a ranger in Daniel Boone National Forest for 30 years. And I'm telling you this because I'm old now, and someone needs to remember. Someone needs to know the truth about what lives in these mountains, about the promises we made long ago, about the things we protect, even when nobody believes they exist. Especially then, because the creature in Wildman Hollow isn't the only one. There are others, in the deep places, in the forgotten places. They're still there, still watching, still waiting. And as long as people like me keep our promises, they'll leave you alone. But if we fail, if the sacred places are destroyed, if the ancient agreements are broken, well, I hope you never have to find out what happens then. I really do. My name is Diana Stormcrow, and I've been a forest ranger for 16 years. Before that, I spent 6 years in military police. I thought I'd seen everything humans could do to each other. I was wrong about what I hadn't seen. It was early September 1988 when I got the call that would change everything I thought I knew about the world. I was sitting in my ranger station in the Chattahoochee National Forest, filling out paperwork about bear activity near the hiking trails. The phone rang. "Ranger Stormcrow, this is Bill Henderson. My wife and I were hiking near Panther Creek yesterday, and we saw something really strange." I picked up my pen. Strange usually meant people saw a bear and thought it was Bigfoot. "What did you see, Mr. Henderson?" "A soldier. In a Confederate uniform. He was standing by the creek, and he pointed at us. Then he just disappeared." I wrote it down, but I didn't believe it. "Did you take any photos?" "We tried. The camera wouldn't work. Brand new film, fresh batteries, nothing." After I hung up, I stared at my notes. Panther Creek was deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, miles from any roads. The area was thick with oak and pine trees, and the creek ran fast and cold over ancient rocks. It was a beautiful place, but isolated. If someone was playing dress-up out there, they were going to a lot of trouble. I'm 41 years old. I've tracked missing hikers through snowstorms and stopped poachers from killing black bears. I've broken up fights and investigated deaths. I don't scare easily, and I definitely don't believe in ghosts. My ex-husband used to joke that I was too practical to believe in anything I couldn't arrest. But I believe in doing my job right. So the next morning, I loaded my truck with gear and drove out to Panther Creek. The dirt road ended 2 miles from the creek. I parked and grabbed my pack radio, first aid kit, water, compass, and my metal detector. That last one wasn't standard ranger equipment, but I'd learned it was useful for finding old camps or buried trash that people left behind. The hike took 40 minutes. The forest was quiet that day. Too quiet. I noticed it about halfway there. No birdsong, no squirrels chattering in the trees. Just the sound of my boots on the trail and the wind in the leaves. When I reached Panther Creek, I understood why the Hendersons had been spooked. The place felt wrong. The air was heavy, like before a thunderstorm, but the sky was clear. The creek water looked darker than it should, almost red-brown in the shadows. I walked along the bank, looking for signs of someone camping or playing pranks. That's when I found them. 3 brass buttons, arranged in a perfect triangle on a flat rock. They were old, really old, with the Confederate seal stamped on them. Next to them was a belt buckle, also Confederate, with the letters CSA still visible despite the rust. I put on gloves and picked them up carefully. They felt cold, much colder than they should be after sitting in the September Sunday. My metal detector started beeping before I even turned it on. I looked at the power switch. It was off, but the beeping got louder, more insistent. I turned it on properly, and the needle jumped so hard it hit the maximum reading. According to my detector, there was massive iron content underground, right where I was standing. Something was buried here, something big. I marked the spot with fluorescent tape and took photos. The whole time, I felt like someone was watching me. I kept turning around, but the forest was empty. Just trees and shadows and that strange, heavy silence. I made it back to my truck as the sun was setting. My hands were shaking as I radioed the station. I told them I'd found potential historical artifacts and requested contact with the state archaeology department. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those buttons arranged in that perfect triangle, and I kept remembering something my grandmother used to say. She was Creek Indian, from the families that had lived in these mountains for generations. She told me that some places remember what happened to them, that pain and injustice could soak into the ground like blood. I'd always thought she was being poetic. I was about to learn she'd been telling the truth. Dr. Sarah Chen from the State Archaeology Office arrived 3 days later. She was young, enthusiastic, and excited about the buttons I'd found. She brought ground-penetrating radar and a team of graduate students. It took them less than an hour to confirm what my metal detector had screamed at me. "Diana," Sarah said, her face pale. "There are bodies down there, a lot of bodies, at least 30, maybe more, all in a mass grave." I felt cold, despite the warm afternoon Sunday. How old? Civil War era, based on the artifacts. But this isn't a known battle site. There's no record of any fighting in this area. Could it be a field hospital? Disease? She shook her head. The radar shows they're all piled together. No organization. And look at this. She pointed to her computer screen, which showed the ground scan. See these marks? Those are bullet impacts on bones. This was an execution. I spent that evening in the Blue Ridge Library, going through old records. Most Civil War documentation focused on major battles, but I found references to something else: Confederate deserters operating in the Georgia mountains in 1864. Units of soldiers who'd abandoned the war and hidden in the wilderness. The next morning, I drove out to visit Mrs. Eloise Whitaker, who was 93 years old and whose Creek family had lived in these mountains since before Georgia was a state. She sat on her porch in a rocking chair, and when I mentioned Panther Creek, her eyes went sharp and clear. "You found them," she said. It wasn't a question. "Found what, Mrs. Whitaker?" "The soldiers. The good ones. My great-great-grandmother told me the story when I was a girl." She leaned forward. "In 1864, there was a Confederate unit ordered to burn Creek family farms and kill anyone who resisted. But the captain refused. He and 30 of his men deserted instead. They warned the Creek families and helped them hide. What happened to the soldiers? They were hunted down, executed as traitors, and buried in an unmarked grave. My family has known for 120 years. And we've known about the Guardian, too." "Guardian?" "The captain's ghost. He still watches over that place, making sure nobody disturbs his men, making sure their sacrifice isn't forgotten." She looked at me with those sharp eyes. "You've seen him, haven't you?" I hadn't. But that night, I would. I went back to Panther Creek at sunset to collect more photos for the archaeology report. Sarah's team had left markers and equipment, planning to start a full excavation the next week. I was photographing the site markers when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. A man stood 20 feet away. He wore a Confederate officer's uniform gray wool jacket with captain's insignia, muddy boots, a hat with the brim pulled low. But I could see through him. Not completely, but enough to see the trees behind him, like looking through dirty glass. I've faced armed suspects and aggressive bears. I've been in situations where I thought I might die. But nothing prepared me for the reality of seeing a ghost. He didn't speak. He just pointed at the ground, then at me, then made a gesture like he was writing something down. Then he was gone. Not fading away, just gone, between one heartbeat and the next. My camera fell from my hands. I ran back to my truck, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would break through my chest. I locked the doors and sat there for 20 minutes, trying to breathe normally. The photos I'd taken were on the passenger seat. My hands shook as I picked them up. In 3 of them, taken from different angles, the Confederate captain stood in the background. In one, he was pointing directly at the camera. I drove straight to Sarah's hotel. "You're gonna think I'm crazy," I said, spreading the photos on her desk. She stared at them for a long time. "I don't think you're crazy. Yesterday, one of my students said he saw a man in old clothes watching us work. When we looked up, nobody was there. I thought he was tired." She touched one of the photos. "What does he want?" "I think he wants us to tell his story." Mrs. Whitaker said these soldiers died protecting Creek families. They were executed as traitors, but they were heroes. "Then we'll tell it. We'll make sure everyone knows." But someone else had different plans. The next morning, I got a call from the regional office. A development company called Pinnacle Properties had filed a lawsuit to stop the excavation. They owned the land around Panther Creek and had plans to build a shopping center. A mass grave would kill the project. "We have to keep excavating," I told Sarah. "We have to get those men proper recognition." That afternoon, a man named Robert Decker showed up at the site. He was a treasure hunter with a metal detector and a smirk. He'd heard about the artifacts and wanted his share of the find. Sarah tried to explain that this was a protected archaeological site and he needed to leave. He laughed and walked right past her, heading for the marked grave. I called out to stop him, but he kept going. He stood directly over the mass grave and started waving his metal detector around. "Jackpot," he said. "I'm gonna be." He stopped mid-sentence. His face went white. He grabbed his chest. I ran toward him, reaching for my radio to call for medical help. But I stopped when I saw what he was seeing. The Confederate captain stood right in front of Decker, and he wasn't alone. All around the clearing, Confederate soldiers materialized, 30 of them, maybe more. Young men and old men, all in tattered gray uniforms. All transparent, all staring at the treasure hunter who'd come to disturb their rest. Decker made a choking sound and collapsed. By the time the ambulance arrived an hour later, he was dead. The paramedics said it looked like a massive heart attack. He was only 35 years old. That night, I stood in my ranger station and looked at the photos again. In the last one I'd taken before Decker's death, I could see shadows of all 30 soldiers surrounding the grave. I'd spent 16 years dealing with facts and evidence. But the facts were clear now. The dead were watching, and they wouldn't rest until justice was done. The medical examiner ruled Decker's death natural causes, but everyone at Panther Creek knew better. Sarah's graduate students started refusing to work after dark. One of them quit entirely, saying he kept having dreams about soldiers asking him to remember their names. I spent every evening in the library and historical society, piecing together the real story. What I found made me sick. In June 1864, Confederate Captain James Whitmore received orders to burn Creek family farms along Panther Creek and execute any men who resisted. The families had refused to provide supplies to the Confederate Army, claiming they'd already given everything they had. But Captain Whitmore had grown up near Creek families. His best friend as a child had been a Creek boy named Thomas Running Deer. Instead of following orders, Whitmore warned the families and helped them hide their food stores deep in the forest. When his commanding officer discovered the disobedience, Whitmore and 30 of his men were declared traitors. They were hunted down by a Confederate execution squad and shot beside Panther Creek. Their bodies were dumped in an unmarked mass grave. The Creek families they'd saved never forgot, but the official Confederate records called them deserters and cowards. I found Captain Whitmore's name in a list of disgraced officers. 31 good men, erased from history because they'd refused to murder innocent families. That's when I understood what the ghost wanted. Not just recognition, the truth. Strange things started happening at Panther Creek. Hikers reported seeing campfires at night, but when rangers investigated, the fires were gone and the ground was cold. People smelled cooking, food, salt, pork, and hardtack in the middle of empty forest. And the sightings multiplied. It wasn't just Captain Whitmore anymore. Witnesses reported seeing entire groups of Confederate soldiers walking patrol patterns around the gravesite, always at dawn or dusk, always silent except for the sound of their boots on the ground. Sarah pushed forward with the excavation, but Pinnacle Properties pushed back harder. They got a judge to issue a temporary restraining order, claiming the archaeology work was damaging their property value. The excavation stopped. That's when my son Marcus called. He was 14 and lived with his mother most of the time, but he wanted to visit for the weekend. "Mom, my history teacher said I could do my project on the Civil War soldiers you found. Can we go see the site?" Every instinct I had screamed no. But Marcus was struggling in school, and this was the first time he'd shown real interest in a project. How could I say no? "We'll go during the day," I told him, "and you stay close to me." Saturday morning was bright and clear, perfect weather. Marcus brought his camera and notebook, excited to see a real archaeological site. We hiked to Panther Creek together. I showed him where the grave was, explained what we'd found. He took photos and asked questions, and for a while, everything seemed normal. Then Marcus looked up from his notebook. "Mom, who's that man?" Captain Whitmore stood at the edge of the clearing, watching us. But this time, he looked solid, real. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought he was a living person in costume. Marcus walked toward me, slowly. "But Mom, now." My son moved closer, and I put myself between him and the ghost. But the captain didn't move. He just stood there, and I realized something. He looked sad. Then he spoke. His voice sounded far away, like someone talking through water. "Protect them," he said. "Like we tried to protect them. Don't let them erase us." "I'm trying," I said. "But they won't let us excavate. They won't let us tell your story." "Then make them listen." The captain's form flickered. "Before it's too late. Before they build over us and we're forgotten forever." He disappeared, and Marcus grabbed my arm. "Mom, I saw him. I really saw him." "I know, buddy. I know." We left Panther Creek, but I couldn't stop thinking about the captain's words. Before it's too late. What did that mean? I found out Monday morning. Pinnacle Properties had won their lawsuit. Not only was the excavation permanently stopped, but they'd gotten permission to begin construction in 2 weeks. They planned to clear the entire area, including the mass grave. The bodies of 31 heroes would be ground up by bulldozers and poured over with concrete foundation for a shopping center. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Captain Whitmore and his men, executed for doing the right thing. buried and forgotten. And now, erased even from their grave. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. It was Deputy Sheriff Mike Torres. "Diana, you need to get out to Panther Creek, now." "What happened?" "Just come. And bring your camera." I drove through the dark, my truck's headlights cutting through the mountain fog. When I reached the parking area, I saw Mike's patrol car and 3 other vehicles, Sarah's rental car, and 2 trucks from Pinnacle Properties. I hiked the trail by flashlight. Even before I reached the clearing, I could see the glow. The mass grave was surrounded by ghostly campfires. Dozens of them, arranged in a perfect military camp layout. And around each fire sat Confederate soldiers, all of them transparent, all of them staring at the 3 surveyors from Pinnacle Properties. The surveyors were huddled together in the center of the clearing, too terrified to move. They'd been there for 4 hours. Sarah stood next to Mike, filming everything with her video camera. "They showed up at midnight to start marking the construction site," she whispered. "The ghosts appeared immediately. They've been trapped here ever since." I walked into the clearing. The soldiers watched me but didn't move. I recognized Captain Whitmore sitting at the largest fire. "Let them go," I said. "They're just doing their jobs." The captain shook his head. "They come to destroy us, to build over our bones and forget our sacrifice. I won't let that happen. I promise you, I'll find a way to stop this. But you have to let them go." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the campfires went out. The soldiers faded, and the 3 surveyors ran for their lives, screaming. One of them was struck by lightning exactly halfway down the trail, even though the sky was clear. He died instantly. The official report called it a freak accident. But I knew the truth. The soldiers were done being patient. This was war now. And I was caught in the middle. The lightning death made the news. Suddenly, Panther Creek wasn't just a legal battle over a construction site, it was a national story. Ghost soldiers strike down developer. Haunted mass grave in Georgia mountains. Pinnacle Properties hired lawyers and publicists to call it all nonsense. But they couldn't explain the photographs and videos. They couldn't explain why their surveyor died on a clear night, struck by lightning that came from nowhere. I sat in my ranger station and made a decision that would either save my career or end it. I called the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and told them everything. The whole story, Captain Whitmore, the execution, the Creek families, the haunting. I gave them copies of all my research, all the historical documents proving these men were heroes, not traitors. The story ran on the front page. By that afternoon, it was picked up nationally. That's when the phone calls started. The regional director wanted me fired for bringing unwanted attention to the Forest Service. The State Archaeology Office threatened to revoke Sarah's permits for unprofessional conduct. Pinnacle Properties filed harassment charges against me. But something else happened too. Historians started calling, offering help. The Creek Nation issued a statement supporting the soldiers' recognition. Veterans groups protested outside Pinnacle Properties' corporate office. And Mrs. Eloise Whitaker appeared on national television. "My family has known this story for 6 generations," she said. "These men died saving our ancestors. They deserve to be remembered as heroes, not forgotten in an unmarked grave under a parking lot." The public pressure worked. A judge issued an injunction stopping construction until a full historical review could be conducted. I thought we'd won. Then Pinnacle Properties played their final card. They found a loophole. If no relatives of the dead soldiers could be found to claim the remains, the land could still be developed after a respectful relocation of the bones to a distant cemetery. It was legal genocide. The soldiers would be dug up, separated, and buried in unmarked graves scattered across Georgia. Their story would be broken into pieces and forgotten. I drove out to Panther Creek that evening. I needed to think, and I always thought better in the forest. The sun was setting when I reached the clearing. The air felt heavy again, charged with electricity. Captain Whitmore appeared beside me. This time, he looked solid, real, like a living man. All 30 of his soldiers stood with him, forming a line between me and the grave. "You tried," the captain said. His voice was clearer now, stronger. "We know you tried. I'm not done trying. There has to be a way." "There is." He stepped closer. "But it will cost you everything you've built, your career, your reputation, maybe your freedom. Tell me, He told me the truth then, the whole truth. About the day they died, about the Creek family who watched from the trees, about the promise his men made as they faced the execution squad. They swore that if they were murdered for protecting the innocent, they would never rest until justice was done. And he told me one more thing, something that made my blood run cold. My sergeant's name was William Stormcrow. He was your great-great-great-grandfather, Creek Indian, married to a Scottish woman. He died here with us. I stared at him. That's not possible. Your grandmother knew. She's the one who's been praying for us all these years, asking the spirits to send help. She sent you. I thought about my grandmother's stories, about places that remember, about how she'd always insisted I become a ranger in these exact mountains. She'd been preparing me my whole life for this moment. What do I have to do? I asked. Tell them you're a descendant. Claim the bodies. They can't relocate remains if family refuses. But they'll investigate you. They'll find out your ancestor was a deserter. They'll use it to destroy you. I don't care. And I realized I meant it. These men deserve to rest in peace, in the place they chose to die. My great-great-great-grandfather deserves to be remembered as a hero. Captain Whitmore smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile. Then we'll help you. One last time. The ghosts surrounded me. And suddenly, I saw visions, not just images, but memories. I lived through the execution, felt the bullets, tasted the fear and pride of men dying for something bigger than themselves. I saw the Creek families watching from hiding, crying for the soldiers who'd saved them. I saw my ancestor's face as he faced death with courage. When the visions ended, I was lying on the ground, tears streaming down my face. The soldiers were gone, but I knew what I had to do. I called every news outlet in Georgia. I announced on camera that I was William Stormcrow's direct descendant, and I was claiming the bodies under federal heritage laws. I showed them the family records I'd found, the genealogy that connected me directly to one of the executed soldiers. Pinnacle Properties tried to fight it, but they couldn't. The law was clear. The bodies stayed. 3 months later, Panther Creek was designated a national memorial site. The grave was properly excavated, and all 31 soldiers were reburied with full military honors. Their names were carved on a granite monument, along with the truth of what they'd done. My career in the Forest Service ended. I was fired for improper conduct and abuse of authority. The official reason was that I'd withheld information about my family connection to the site. But I didn't care. I had a new job, historian and curator of the Panther Creek Memorial, making sure visitors knew the real story, making sure those men were never forgotten again. The night before the dedication ceremony, I returned to Panther Creek alone. The monument was finished, lit by soft lights, 31 names carved in stone. Captain James Whitmore, Sergeant William Stormcrow, 29 other men who'd chosen conscience over duty. I stood there reading the names when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. Captain Whitmore stood beside me, but he looked different now. Peaceful. The strain and anger were gone from his face. Behind him, all 30 soldiers stood in formation. They looked like they had before the execution, young, strong, hopeful. "Thank you," the captain said. "We can rest now. Our story lives. Will I see you again? Perhaps. There are other forgotten graves in these mountains, other injustices that need witnesses." He smiled. "If you're willing to look." Then, one by one, the soldiers faded into light, not disappearing, transforming, moving on to whatever comes next for souls who've completed their final mission. Captain Whitmore was the last to go. He saluted me, and I saluted back. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the clearing. Except I wasn't really alone. Marcus stood at the edge of the trees, camera in hand. "I thought you might be here," my son said. "Did you see them?" "Did you?" "Yeah," they looked happy. We walked back down the trail together. Behind us, I heard something I'd never heard at Panther Creek before: birds singing. The oppressive silence was gone. The forest was alive again. The dedication ceremony the next day brought hundreds of people: veterans, historians, Creek Nation representatives, and 3 elderly women who were direct descendants of the families the soldiers had saved. But the person who spoke the most was Mrs. Eloise Whitaker. At 94 years old, she stood at the microphone and told the story her family had preserved for 6 generations. "These men were called traitors," she said. But they were heroes. They chose humanity over hatred. They chose to protect the powerless instead of obeying orders that violated everything decent. That's not desertion. That's courage. The crowd erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Sarah pulled me aside. I got a call from a historian in Tennessee. There's a similar site near Chattanooga, possible mass grave, reports of ghostly activity, no official recognition. He wants to know if we're interested in investigating. I looked at the monument, at the names carved in stone, at the truth that had almost been buried forever. Yeah, I said, we're interested. Because I understood now what my grandmother had known all along. Some places do remember. Some injustices do echo through generations. And sometimes, the dead need living voices to tell their stories. I spent 16 years as a forest ranger thinking I was protecting land and wildlife. I didn't know I was preparing for something bigger, protecting truth and memory and the stories of forgotten heroes. The ghost taught me that history isn't just about the past. It's about making sure the past isn't erased or rewritten by people with money and power. 6 months after the dedication, I was hiking through a different part of the Chattahoochee Forest when I found it another perfect triangle of brass buttons on a flat rock. Another site humming with metallic signatures from my detector. Another place where the air felt heavy with old pain. I radioed it in, requested the archaeology team, and sat down to wait. The sun was setting when I felt someone watching. I looked up. A young Confederate private stood at the edge of the trees, transparent in the fading light. He looked hopeful. "We can help you," I said. "We can tell your story too." He nodded once and disappeared. I smiled. My grandmother was right. She always was. Some places remember. Some spirits wait for justice. And some people are born to bridge the gap between the living and the dead, to make sure that courage and sacrifice are never forgotten. My name is Diana Stormcrow. I'm a historian now, not a ranger. But I'm still protecting the forest. I'm just protecting its memories instead of its trees. And the work is far from over. My name is Luther Crowfeather, and I've been a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains for 13 years. Before that, I spent 15 years underground in the coal mines until a cave-in crushed my left leg and taught me I wanted to see the sky every day. I walk with a limp now, but I can still hike 20 miles through rough country if I need to. I'm telling you this because you need to understand something about me. I'm not the kind of man who believes in ghost stories. My grandfather used to sit on the porch and tell tales about haints and mountain spirits, and I'd smile and nod, but inside I figured it was just moonshine talking. I believed in what I could see and touch. Weather patterns, animal tracks, the weight of my ranger badge in my pocket. I believed in real things. That was before Cataract Falls, before the summer of 1956, when I learned that some old stories are old because they're true. It's October now, and I'm sitting in my cabin with my twin daughters sleeping in the next room. They're 12 years old, Sarah and Emma, and they're the reason I'm still here to tell this story. Their mother died when they were born, and for 12 years it's been just the three of us in this little ranger station near the edge of the park. I need to tell you what happened, not because I want to, but because other rangers need to know. Because there are places in these mountains where the rules are different, and if you don't know that, you might not come back. It started on July 15th with a phone call from the main office. "Luther, we've got a situation at Cataract Falls," my supervisor said. "Family of 5 camping up there reported hearing screaming every night. Woman's voice," they said. 3 nights in a row, always at 3 a.m. They want someone to check it out. I grabbed my gear and headed up there. It was a 2-hour hike through thick forest, the kind where the trees grow so close together that noon looks like evening. I knew that area. Well, Cataract Falls was the most remote campsite we had, tucked into a hollow so deep that your radio barely worked. The campsite was empty when I got there. Not just empty, abandoned. The tent was still standing, flaps open. Breakfast was laid out on the picnic table, eggs and bacon on paper plates, still wet with grease. Coffee in tin cups, gone cold but not old. A stuffed bear sat in the dirt next to a sleeping bag. Nobody leaves breakfast behind. Nobody leaves their gear behind. And nobody leaves a kid's stuffed animal in the dirt, I called out. My voice echoed off the hollow walls and died in the thick air. Nothing answered. That's when I saw the note. It was pinned to the tent with a stick, written on the back of a trail map in shaky handwriting. She comes for the children first. The temperature dropped. I don't mean it got a little cooler. I mean it went from 80 degrees to maybe 40 in the space of 3 seconds. My breath came out in clouds. Ice crystals formed on the tent fabric while I watched. I stepped back from the campsite and pulled out my radio. Static. I moved to higher ground. More static, but underneath it, I heard something else. Voices, high and thin, children crying. There were no children anywhere near me. I spent the rest of that day searching, found nothing. No tracks leading away, no sign of struggle, no blood. Just that note, and the feeling that something in the hollow was watching me. By the time I hiked back to my station, the sun was setting, and my leg was screaming, and all I wanted was to hug my daughters and forget about that cold campsite. But when I got home and looked at my watch, it had stopped. The hands were frozen at 3:33 a.m. I filed my report the next morning. Missing persons, family of 5, Michael and Susan Porter. 3 kids aged 14, 11, and 8. I gave the description of the abandoned campsite, mentioned the note, left out the part about the temperature, and the voices in the static. You learn quick that if you talk about things like that, people think you're crazy or drunk. The Park Service sent up a search team. 30 people combing through that hollow for 2 days straight. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of torn clothing, not a single sign that the Porter family had ever existed, except for that campsite and their car sitting in the parking area down at the trailhead. On the 3rd day, they called off the search. Told me to close the area to camping and keep an eye on things. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that note. She comes for the children first. I got up at midnight and went to my bookshelf, pulled out the old journals my grandfather had left me. He'd been a storyteller, and he'd written down every mountain legend he'd ever heard. It took me an hour, but I found it. A story about the Bell Witch. According to the journal, the Bell family had a homestead somewhere in these mountains back in the 1822. The witch, or spirit, or demon, whatever you want to call it, had come for them. It had started with strange sounds and objects moving on their own. Then it had started talking. Then it had started killing, and it had gone for the children first. The family had finally driven it away, using some kind of old mountain magic, but the witch had sworn she'd come back, that she'd wait in the hollow places until the right time, and then she'd feed again. I closed the journal and laughed at myself. Here I was, a grown man with a badge and a gun, sitting up at midnight reading ghost stories like a scared kid. Then all 3 windows in my cabin blew open at once. No wind, just the windows slamming open so hard the glass cracked. The temperature in the room dropped, and from somewhere in the forest outside, I heard a woman's voice singing a lullaby. It was my wife's voice. My wife had been dead for 12 years. I grabbed my flashlight and my gun, and ran outside. The singing stopped. The forest was silent, I mean really silent, the kind of quiet that isn't natural. No crickets, no owls, no rustling leaves, just my breathing and my heart hammering in my chest. "Who's there?" I shouted. Something laughed. A woman's laugh, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Then rocks started falling from the sky. Not little pebbles, big stones the size of baseballs, dropping straight down out of the darkness. They hit the ground around me but never touched me, like they were being aimed to miss on purpose. I ran back inside and slammed the door. The girls were standing in their bedroom doorway, eyes wide. "Daddy?" Sarah said. "What's happening?" "Just some animals," I lied. "Go back to bed." I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in my chair with my gun in my lap and watched the windows. When the sun came up, I found something that made my blood run cold. There were handprints on my cabin wall. Small handprints, like a child's. But they were 15 feet off the ground, pressed into the wood like someone had climbed straight up the side of the cabin. And the wood around them was blackened, like it had been burned. That morning, I drove down to the valley to talk to some of the old-timers who lived in the hollows. Found a man named Jedediah Moss, who was probably 90 years old and had lived in these mountains his entire life. "You're Luther Crowfeather," he said when I knocked on his door. "Your grandfather was a good man, knew the old ways." "I need to ask you about Haint Hollow," I said. His face went gray. "You been up to Cataract Falls?" "Yes, sir." "You seen her?" "I don't know what I've seen, but people are missing. and strange things are happening. He invited me in and made coffee. His hands shook as he poured it. That hollow's been cursed since before I was born, he said. The Bell Witch lives there. She died angry, and she stayed angry. She takes children, drains the life right out of them to feed herself. Every 20 or 30 years, she gets strong enough to reach out, and then people die. How do you stop her? You don't. You stay away. You don't camp there. You don't hike there. You don't even say her name out loud after dark. And most important, you don't bring children anywhere near that place. I felt sick. My daughters lived less than 5 miles from that hollow. There has to be a way, I said. He looked at me for a long time. Your grandfather helped drive her back last time, in 1927. Used the old protections, iron and salt and fire. But it cost him. The witch don't forget, and she don't forgive. If you're his blood, she'll want you special. I left Jedediah's house with a list of supplies and a sick feeling in my gut. That afternoon, I picked up iron nails and salt and bundles of cedar wood. I didn't know if any of it would help, but I couldn't just do nothing. When I got back to my station, there was another ranger's truck in my driveway. Jimmy Caldwell, my patrol partner. Good man, father of 3, had been a ranger even longer than me. He was sitting on my porch, and his face was white as a sheet. Luther, he said, we got another missing family. The second family had been camping at a site 3 miles from Cataract Falls. The Hendersons, mom, dad, 2 kids aged 9 and 13. Same story as the Porters. Abandoned campsite, food still out, tent still standing. Like they'd all just walked into the forest and never came back. There's more, Jimmy said, and his voice was shaking. I found something at the site. He showed me a photograph. It was old and faded, but I could see what it showed, a family portrait from maybe the 1922nd. A man, a woman, and 5 children. And standing behind them, barely visible in the shadows, was another figure. A woman with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to stare right through the camera. That was tucked under a rock, at their campsite, Jimmy said. Along with this, he handed me a piece of paper. The handwriting was different from the first note, but the message was the same. She comes for the children first. We organized another search. This time I went with them, and I brought my supplies. Hung iron nails on the trees, scattered salt across the trails. I felt crazy doing it, but I was past caring what people thought. On the second day of searching, we found the cave. It was hidden behind a waterfall at the far end of the hollow, the kind of place you'd never see unless you were really looking. Jimmy and I were the ones who went in, because neither of us could convince the other to stay outside alone. We found the bodies about 50 feet in. Not the Porters or the Hendersons. These bodies were older, mummified. 2 people, adults, sitting against the cave wall like they'd just decided to rest for a while. Their skin was gray and paper-thin, dried out like something had sucked all the moisture from their bones. And sitting between them, propped up like dolls, were 3 children. Jimmy threw up. I wanted to, but I was too busy trying not to scream. The children's faces were frozen in expressions of terror, mouths open, eyes wide. Their hands were reaching up toward something. On the cave wall above them, scratched deep into the rock, were words. She fed well. We backed out of that cave so fast I nearly broke my bad leg, called it in on the radio. Within an hour, there were police and Park Service officials crawling all over the site. But by then it was getting dark, and I knew we'd made a mistake. We'd brought too many people, too much attention, and the sun was setting. The first scream came at 8:47 p.m. One of the search team, a young ranger named Pete Morrison, just started screaming. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, staring into the forest, and he was screaming like something was killing him, even though nothing was, touching him. We ran to him. His eyes were huge and terrified, and he was pointing at something none of us could see. "She's here," he whispered. "She's right there. Can't you see her? She's smiling." Then his throat opened up. Not like someone cut it, like it just split apart on its own, blood spraying everywhere. He fell down and didn't move again. Everybody ran. I don't blame them. Trained professionals, experienced rangers, and we all ran like rabbits because something had just killed a man without touching him. I ran too, found Jimmy and grabbed him, and we sprinted back toward the main trail. Behind us, the forest erupted with sound trees cracking, rocks falling, and underneath it all, a woman singing that lullaby. My wife's lullaby. The one she'd hummed to the girls when they were babies, back when she was still alive. We made it back to our trucks just as full dark hit. 17 people had gone into that hollow for the search. 15 came out. Pete Morrison was dead, and a photographer named Alice Chen was just gone, vanished somewhere between the cave and the trailhead. I drove home too fast, tires squealing on the mountain roads. All I could think about was my daughters. Had to get home. Had to make sure they were safe. The cabin was dark when I pulled up. The door was open. I grabbed my gun and ran inside, shouting their names. Found them in their bedroom, huddled together on Sarah's bed. They were staring at the window. On the glass, written in condensation, were 2 words. Pretty children. Daddy, Emma whispered. There's a lady outside. She's been watching us. I looked out the window. Saw nothing but darkness. What did she look like? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Pretty, Sarah said. Long, dark hair. But Daddy, her eyes were wrong. They were in her hands. My blood turned to ice. What? She held up her hands, Emma said, and she had eyes in her palms. And she smiled at us. I pulled both girls close. Listen to me. You don't look out the windows anymore. You don't go outside. And if you hear anyone calling your names, even if it sounds like someone you know, you don't answer. Understand? They nodded, scared. I spent that night building a salt circle around the cabin, hung iron nails over every door and window, burned cedar in the fireplace until the smoke was so thick we could barely breathe. I didn't care if it made sense. I didn't care if it was crazy. Something was hunting my daughters, and I'd do anything to stop it. At 3:33 a.m., my watch stopped again, and from outside in the darkness, I heard my wife's voice calling, Luther, honey, let me in. I'm so cold. I miss the girls. I sat in that chair with my gun and didn't move until sunrise, but I knew we couldn't keep hiding. Whatever this thing was, it was getting stronger, and it wasn't going to stop. The next morning, I took the girls to park headquarters. Told my supervisor I needed emergency leave. Told him something was wrong at my station and I needed my daughters somewhere safe. He put us up in a room in the admin building. Security guards. Locked doors. Radio contact. Should have been safe. That night, the girls started sleepwalking. I woke up at 2 a.m. to find both of them gone. Tore through the building looking for them, found them in the parking lot. They were holding hands, walking toward the forest, and their eyes were open, but nobody was home. I grabbed them. They fought me. Not like normal kids fighting, they were strong, stronger than they should have been. It took everything I had to drag them back inside. When they woke up, they didn't remember anything. But Emma's arms had bruises in the shape of handprints, and Sarah's feet were bleeding like she'd been walking on sharp rocks. That's when Jimmy found me. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I've been researching, he said. Found some old records from the 1,820 seconds. Luther. The Bell Witch, her real name was Catherine Bell. She had 3 children. Someone murdered them in 1823, and Catherine killed herself in that hollow out of grief. But according to the stories, she didn't die. Not really. She turned into something else. Why children? I asked. Why does she take children? Because she's trying to replace the ones she lost. She drains their life force, feeds on it, uses it to stay strong, but it's never enough. She keeps hunting, keeps taking, over and over. And Luther, I think she knows about your girls. I think she knows they're twins, and she had twins of her own. Something clicked in my head. The handprints on the cabin wall, the voices in the static, the way she'd called out in my wife's voice, trying to make me bring the girls to her. She'd been hunting them from the start. There's more, Jimmy said. I found a journal entry from 1927. Your grandfather was part of a group that drove her back. They used some kind of ritual: iron, salt, fire, and something else. Something about forgiveness. Forgiveness? For what? For whoever killed her children. She's trapped by her own hatred. See? She can't move on because she won't let go. If someone could make her remember her children with love instead of rage, maybe the curse would break. It sounded insane, but we were past insane. Where would we do this? I asked. It has to be in the hollow. where she died. And Luther, it has to be your daughters who do it. Absolutely not. I'm not taking them anywhere near that place. If you don't, she'll keep coming. She'll keep getting stronger. Eventually, she'll get through whatever protections you build, and she'll take them. This is the only way. I wanted to hit him, wanted to scream at him, but I knew he was right. That night, I sat with Sarah and Emma and told them everything. About the missing families, about the Bell Witch, about what we needed to do. They were terrified, but they were also braver than me. If we don't do this, Sarah said, she'll hurt other kids, won't she? Yes. Then we have to try. We left at dawn, me, the girls, and Jimmy, drove to the trailhead and hiked up to Cataract Falls carrying bags of salt, iron nails, bundles of cedar, and a photograph I'd found in my grandfather's things, a picture of Catherine Bell's children, smiling before they died. The hollow was waiting for us. The temperature dropped the moment we crossed into it. The forest went silent, and somewhere ahead, something laughed. We made it to the clearing where the porters had camped. Built a circle of salt and iron, lit fires of cedar at the cardinal points. Placed the photograph in the center. The girls stood on either side of it, holding hands. Then we waited. She came at 3:33 p.m. First just a cold wind that stank of rot and old death. Then shadows that moved wrong, flowing like water through the trees. Then she stepped into the clearing, and God help me, she was beautiful. Long dark hair, white dress that moved in a wind we couldn't feel. And when she raised her hands, I saw the eyes in her palms, human eyes, watching us, blinking. The pretty children, she said, and her voice was 1,000 voices. All the children she'd ever taken. Give them to me. They're mine. No, I said, standing between her and my daughters. She moved faster than anything should move. 1 second she was at the edge of the clearing. The next she was 6 inches from my face. Her breath was ice and decay. Your grandfather stole my peace, she hissed. Your blood owes me. Give me the children or I'll take everything. Behind me, Sarah's voice rang out. Catherine Bell. The witch froze. We know what happened to you, Emma said. We know about your children. The witch turned to look at them. The eyes in her hands were crying. We brought you something, Sarah said. She held up the stain, photograph. Your children, look at them, remember them. The witch let out a scream that shattered trees. The ground shook, the air itself seemed to tear. But then she saw the photograph, saw her children smiling, and something in her broke. I couldn't save them, she whispered. I tried so hard. We know, Emma said gently, and we're sorry. But taking other children won't bring yours back. You know that. You have to let them go. I can't. The pain will end, Sarah said. But you have to forgive. You have to forgive yourself. The witch fell to her knees. The eyes in her hands were sobbing. I loved them so much, she said. We know, the girls said together. And they loved you. But they wouldn't want this. They'd want you to be at peace. The witch looked up at the sky. For just a moment, I saw her as she must have been not a monster, but a mother destroyed by grief. How? She asked. Close your eyes, Sarah said. Remember them happy, remember their laughter, and let go. The witch closed her eyes. The eyes in her palms closed too. And then, like smoke and wind, she was gone. The temperature in the hollow rose. Birds started singing. I heard water running in the creek again, natural sounds returning like the world was waking up from a nightmare. The salt circle was burned black, and the iron nails had melted into puddles. But we were alive, and my daughters were safe. Jimmy and I looked at each other. We didn't say anything. What was there to say? We found the missing families on the way back down the trail. All of them, sitting beside the path like they'd just woken up from a long sleep. The Porters. The Hendersons. Even Alice Chen, the photographer who disappeared during the search. They were thin and weak, but they were alive. None of them remembered anything except a dream about a sad woman singing. The Park Service did its investigation. Called the deaths Pete, Morrison, and the 2 people we'd found in the cave accidental. Said the missing families had gotten lost and disoriented. Closed Cataract Falls to camping indefinitely. I wrote a report, the real report, with everything that had happened. Sent it to my supervisor. He called me into his office the next day. Luther, he said, I believe you, But if we file this officially, you'll lose your badge and probably get committed somewhere. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep this report in a locked file, and we're going to make sure every ranger knows not to let families with children camp in that hollow. Understood? Yes, sir. And Luther, your grandfather did the same thing in 1927. It's in his file, too. Whatever you Crowfeathers are, you're the kind of rangers we need in these mountains. I went home that night and held my daughters close. They were different now, older somehow, like they'd seen something that changed them. Maybe they had. Sarah looked up at me. Daddy, are there others? Other places like that hollow? I don't know, I said, but I was lying, because my grandfather's journal had mentioned 13 other sites. 13 thin places in the Appalachian Mountains where the rules were different. Emma smiled, but it wasn't a kid's smile anymore. If there are, we can help them too, can't we? I thought about Catherine Bell, trapped in her grief for over a century. Thought about all the people she'd killed because no one knew how to help her find peace. Yeah, I said. I guess we can. That was 4 months ago. I'm still a ranger at the Smokies. My daughters still live with me in the cabin. And sometimes, late at night, I pull out my grandfather's journal and read about those other places. The ones where people disappear. Where things hunt in the darkness. Where the old stories are true. One day, I'll have to go to those places. But not yet. Not while my daughters are still young. For now, we stay close to home, and I teach them what my grandfather taught me, that there are things in these mountains older than the trees. And sometimes the job of a ranger isn't just to protect people from nature. Sometimes it's to protect them from what lives in the shadows between the trees. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's to help those shadows find peace. Last week, a family came to my station asking about good camping spots. They had 3 children, all under 12. I steered them away from the hollows, sent them to a nice, safe campground near the main road. But I watched them go, and I wondered how many other hollows there are, how many other things are waiting in the dark places. I don't know if we got lucky with Catherine Bell, or if Sarah and Emma have some kind of gift. My grandfather's journal hints at it, says, some people can see the thin places, can walk between the worlds, can speak to the things that linger. Maybe that's why the Bell Witch wanted them so badly. I guess I'll find out eventually, because the mountains keep their secrets, but they also have a way of sharing them with people who are meant to know. And whether I like it or not, I'm one of those people now. My name is Luther Crowfeather, and I'm a ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains. And I'm telling you, if you ever go camping in the deep hollows, and you hear a woman singing in the darkness, don't go looking for her. Some songs are best left unheard,